Okay, we'll go ahead and call the March 22nd Board of Finance meeting to order, please. Members in attendance are Carl Johnson, Gary Nino, Mike Anderson, Amy Friend, myself, Paul Simons, Dan Smith, Winona Bernstein, and Sarah Nelson. First agenda item, or second agenda item, is our public comments, if there are any. Any in the room, feel free to step up to the mic. Very good.
Hi there. So, I've done quite a bit of thinking since your meeting on Monday night, and I decided to do just a little bit of research. But first, I want to tell you that you've really all been great stewards of the town, you know, with our taxes, and you've been very, you know, fiscally responsible, you know, and all that, and I appreciate that. So I look back in the last 3 years. And so I just wanted to share a little bit of data that I found. In last year's budgets, 2022, there were 393 voters, which is a 5% of our people eligible to vote came out to vote. There was a slight mill rate decrease from 28.6 to 28.45. In 2021, at the second referendum, there were 690 voters. That's a 15% turnout. And there was a slight mill rate decrease, well, actually nearly a mill, from 29.5 to 28.6. And as we all remember, in 2020, you were all tasked with passing the budget on your own, with a slight increase from 29 to 29.5. Up until this point, the vast majority of those giving input to the Board of Selectmen and Board of Education budgets have all been in support of the budgets as is to move forward to the town. So I am a taxpayer, as are all the others who have lent their support or their input to this budget. And as much as I appreciate your stewardship over the last few years, I feel like the taxpayers don't need protection from themselves. Like we're here giving input to move the budget forward as is, and to let the town decide. We will be having our public hearing, whereas any other taxpayers could come at that point to voice, you know, other concerns if there are any. But today, here and now, the vast majority has been to move this forward. So I would ask that you consider the input that you've heard, and the vast majority of the taxpayers have asked for to move this forward. I hope you would be a steward in that way as well, to listen to the taxpayer. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other comments in the room? Nothing in the room? Online? Chet, please go ahead and unmute.
Hello, Chet Stefanovich, 35 Button Road. I would just like to speak in favor of moving the budgets, both the Board of Ed and the Board of Selectmen, forward as is. I think it's important to give the people of the town the opportunity to vote on these budgets as they're being presented by the experts who are creating them. I think that the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Ed have both spent extensive amounts of time going over these numbers and coming up with the absolute best possible budgets that we can bring forward. I think that all of us are realizing that things are going up in cost. Very rarely does anything go down in cost. We're constantly moving in an upward trajectory. That's kind of the way things move. So the idea that we've had such consistent small increases over time was going to eventually catch up with us. And I think that it's important that we're planning for these things, having incremental change moving forward into the future. But for the moment, we need to catch up a little bit. Our teachers are doing incredible work in our schools. and it's incredibly important that we as a town support them and show that we support them. I think that it does matter to them and the morale of our teachers to see that people are willing to move forward with the things they need to be successful. I think it's incredibly important that we give that social worker the opportunity to get into our schools, help our families, and to take some of the burden off of our single social worker. I know you've heard this number already stated, but our social worker sees 80 students a week. When you consider the idea that a 40-hour work week, that would give her 30 minutes per kid if she never took a lunch. So we do not have the staffing necessary to truly give these kids what they need. And we're going to end up losing a really good social worker if she feels like her job is unsustainable and is not supported in the way that it needs to be. I think both of these budgets have been incredibly transparent. I think that you can see as a Board of Finance where we're spending our money. And I think that they both looked to find as many savings as possible and to give you a good picture of what we need moving forward. I think that incremental change again is incredibly important. I think that we need to look forward with those capital purchases and everything else, and we need to continually be thinking about the long-term planning. And I would really like to see the Board of Selectmen be able to keep all of those capital projects in their budget and be able to start planning even more carefully regarding those larger expenditures looking forward. So yeah, I'm in favor of both of these budgets as is, and I would ask that the Board of Finance allow them to move forward through the process in the way that they're being presented by the experts who plan them out. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other public comments before we get started with the presentations tonight? Hearing none, we'll go ahead to the agenda item 3, which is the presentation by the Tax Relief Committee.
Good evening. My name's Lou Gingerella, and we're here tonight to present the report that the Tax Relief Committee put together over the last 60 days.
Excuse me, will there be any kind of PowerPoint at all, or just
No,
whatever docs we have?
no. Well,
Okay.
I gave everyone
No.
should have a copy of the report.
I think we do. I just want to.
Is it up? Yep. Should I talk louder? Is that better? All right. Okay, so my name's Lou Gingerella. I was the chairman of the committee. Other committee members here tonight, Connie Barati is here, Ann Nelson, John Olson, Brian Rathburn, and Betty Russ. They were the members of the committee. And as I mentioned, we were given 60 days to come up with a report. And we succeeded in that, which was an accomplishment in of itself. As you know, the Board of Selectmen, with a concurrence of the Finance Board, created the Tax Relief Committee to review the current North Stonington Tax Relief Program and to make some recommendations, if any, for changes in the program. The reports that you have would indicate the recommendations that we've made, the recommendations for the primary focus of our work was an immediate increase in the amount that's allocated for what's referred to as the circuit breaker program. The second thing that we did, we were asked, even though it wasn't exactly as part of what our charge was to take a look at a endorsement of the firefighters incentive program, which the fire chief presented to us. We thought it was a very good program, and we endorsed that idea. In addition to that, besides the immediate recommendation that we have in the report, we also identified a number of other items that we thought would be important for the town to consider on a go-forward basis. We recognized that these are not things that could be implemented immediately, though we did think that they warrant careful consideration and possibly some additional work to see about implementing those items. At this point, I'd be happy to go through the individual items, or we could do it by question. I would leave that to this group.
Great, thank you for that. So I am trying to sort out what the cost of the town this year would be. So I'm seeing this proposal would add approximately $79,000. Is that what for one of the initiatives?
For the circuit breaker program, yes, that's correct. But we need to clarify that just a little bit. There's no way for us to be able to tell you exactly how much this is going to cost the town. People need to apply to do this, and it's income based. So there's no way for us to know at what level of income somebody may come into the town and say, we need some financial assistance. So what we did do, towards the back of the report, there is an exhibit 2A and B, and there we've shown what is existing now, with the 61 participants in town, and the program costs $39,000 to the town.
That's current.
That's currently what's existing.
Okay.
We expanded the level of qualification. We increased not only the dollar amount that would be provided, but we also increased the income level by which somebody could get some assistance. And we based that on income. So the lower income individuals that would qualify for this would receive the greatest benefit. So yes, indeed, the amount does go up by 79,000, and we're estimating, and frankly, it's more guesstimating,
Right.
that 76 people, 75 people would take advantage of it.
Yeah. So I could see that at the first tier or lowest tier of the work here, that you're really, helping those, proposing to help those at the lower income levels. I think that's the right direction for sure.
The way we looked at it was that in total, the amount of money that we're looking at, the $118,000, is a very small percentage of the town's budget. But for the individuals that are in the tax brackets or the income brackets, as identified here, this would represent a substantial benefit for them. And frankly, it's for individuals that can least afford it.
Right. No.
So that's the way we modeled it.
Okay. So this is really the primary remit of your team, right? And that's what you're coming to this board
Yes.
with tonight.
So, just so I'm clear, so currently the town is paying about 39,000 for the circuit breaker program now. And you think the total increase would be 79,000, so it's an estimated increase of 40,000.
No,
No.
the increase is going to, the program would go to a total of 100,
Oh, in
as
18.
estimated,
Okay, okay.
118,000.
So the 79,000 would be the difference.
Yes.
The difference, okay. And this is, income only, it is not age. There's no age.
It is designed for senior citizens and for individuals with disabilities. It is age restricted and unless disability.
Okay. But if you reach an age, but you're out of the income, you don't,
You
Okay.
would not receive it.
what's the age? Just out of curiosity.
65.
Okay.
What other?
I have a couple of questions, just some general statements that were made in the report that I'd like to, just understand a little bit better. So on page 3 at the bottom, the previous to the last paragraph mentions the town's program for relief of firefighters and emergency personnel cost the town of 58,000 and is not reimbursed by the state.
Mhm.
But when I look on page 11, under optional programs, this says that these programs are not offered by the town of North Stonington. So can you help me understand which is,
There are a number of different programs that are available to assist with the supporting the firefighters. So this is just identifying the one program that we have that is referenced on page 3. On
okay,
page 11, there are a number of other programs that the state allows for that the town does not participate in.
okay, so the one that we do have is not described in here, correct?
Right.
Okay,
Yes.
that helps me. Thank you for that.
Something else, sir?
Just trying to see if I missed it in the report before I asked.
Sorry.
I guess, is there a spot in the report where it makes clear what it looks like you're recommending 3 programs for the firefighters?
No, we're not recommending any additional. All we did was endorse the proposal that the fire chief had presented to us. And that was the extent of what we're doing. As he presented it to us, we thought it was a good program. We were
Okay.
asked to review it and we did.
So, okay.
The
so-
other programs that are in place, we didn't review, we didn't look at.
The other 2 programs are in place right now. Okay.
Yes.
So I was just, it says the committee endorses the below program. And then it said, will be in addition to 2 existing.
Right.
So do we have a sense of what the increased cost would be for that in here?
As it was presented, this is with the firefighters program,
Yeah.
the incentive program for those that, the more you go onto calls, the more you'll be compensated. The fire chief did present us with some information on that. I do not have that in this. As I recall, I think that was about $29,000, if I remember correctly,
Okay.
that new initiative would be about that much money. And again, based on an estimate of what he thinks the level of response would be from the individuals in the force.
Okay. I'm just trying to do like a little executive summary at the top level of what the cost would be. So I've got 79,000 for the circuit breaker program estimated. Sounds like
But-
29,000 for the firefighters, but we could verify that later.
Right.
Any other major?
For immediate
Nuggets in here?
consideration, no,
Okay,
that's what we are proposing.
perfect. Thank you.
Connie?
With the mic, please.
I'm gonna move.
Otherwise, she gets all kinds of text messages saying, I can't hear.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
What I wanted to add, that Lou hadn't mentioned is that the fire department's proposal is not our charge. It was not our charge to do anything with. We were asked to listen to the program, either agree or disagree. It gave us some feedback on how we were to proceed. And the other thing I'd like Lou to highlight is how we got to the income levels on the circuit breaker, which I thought would be, beneficial to you.
Okay. The entire committee has the report as I have it here, but the chair has a binder that does have the supporting information for the decisions that we made. And one of those items is the household median income in the town of North Stonington, which we are actually a little bit above average for the state. And so as we looked at this, we thought it would be best to, as we're basing this not just on age, but also on income, that we considered 75% of the median household income to be a good ceiling for how much we would provide, to where we would provide support. So that's how we reached the number that you see in Exhibit 2B, how we came to that dollar amount. And then we consolidated the number of levels that individuals could become looking for assistance.
Is that median income benchmark static or does it change every year?
It's based on the last census. It would change every year, but that's the most current information that we have.
75,000, right?
85,000.
It's 85.
But it could change every year?
It-
Okay,
Yes,
The benchmark doesn't change. I mean, the income.
The-
changes
the-
every year.
right.
the way that you would compute
It
it,
has
where
to be
we,
calculated if who's
you
eligible.
could, we just use that as current info.
I don't know where did you get, so the benchmark that you got is based on the census, so it would only be recalculated every 10 years, correct?
True, but there are areas that you can go to find the current median household income.
Yeah.
We used that because it was readily available for us.
So
But I
so-
know the state of Connecticut does provide that type of information. The housing departments in the state of Connecticut does also provide.
So we'd have to have a mechanism. It's a good call out. We'd have to have some sort of mechanism to be able to say this is the benchmark. Sorry. So we would have to have some sort of mechanism within the town to say we're using this benchmark. And it would be. Yeah, I guess that's a good question, how we're doing it now.
So I see that any benefits stop at 65,000.
Correct.
Is that right? Okay. I heard that 75 or 85,000 comment. That's a different number somewhere else, right?
No.
That's the 85,000 is our average mean income for the town,
Gotcha.
which is slightly above
I
the
see.
state of Connecticut average.
Okay.
And the 65,000 is 75% of the 85,000.
Yeah, okay,
That's
gotcha.
where we came to.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, any other thoughts from anybody else on the board on this?
Yeah,
Yep, please.
just exhibit one, what is that page? I'm sorry, because I can't read this at all. I'm just curious what I'm missing.
Exhibit 1, that's the information that's provided, was given to us. It's the information of the tax incentives that are provided to the various constituents in the town. Is that an accurate representation?
It's yes, it's a report from the assessor's office. I can ask Daryl for a digital copy and email it out to you guys so you have a clearer version. It prints very faint, so when Lou tried to put it into the report, it didn't transfer very well.
Okay, so this is a report of the actual programs that we have in place today.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I have one more question. Oh, I'm sorry.
Please, go
No,
ahead.
no, no. You raised your hand.
Is it part of what we've already discussed?
Yeah,
Then continue.
okay. Sorry. Curious about, so it looks like you estimated probably another additional 15 people would participate as your bench. Just curious the logic that went into that. Is it like double the amount that currently use it? Or sorry, half of the amount that currently use it? Maybe like a 50% increase?
Well, again, we have no way of knowing, so we just did it as best a guess as we could.
Okay,
I think given that, in the census data that you have, it's indicated that there are very, very few households in North Stonington that would qualify for this based on the census data.
okay,
So I would think you wouldn't see a dramatic increase, even though we've increased the level of income that somebody could, the household income, to still qualify.
okay. Yeah, and my math was wrong. I see we have 61 households participating now, so 15 is about a quarter, like, so a 25% increase seems like a reasonable estimate.
And more because we've increased the level of income, household income.
Right,
So that's just what we came to.
opens it up.
There's no database for us to go to, so it was one of those.
Yeah,
Pull it out.
okay, thank you.
I just want to make sure that, well, correct me if I'm wrong, but we already have an incentive program for firefighters for how many, when they go to a call, they are given incentives for going to calls,
Yes,
correct?
the 58,000 that's referenced in the report is the volunteer activity stipend that we give to the fire company, and then it's distributed in the point system to the responding firefighters.
Right. Are you endorsing creating something different from that, Lou?
Yes, that's the chief presented to us an incentive for firefighters to have more calls, to attend more calls. And as it was presented to us, and I apologize, I thought that this would have been presented separately, but I would have included it otherwise, but the more an individual goes on calls, the more compensation they will receive. I think it was something on the order of $20. There was floor. You had to attend so many or go to so many calls. And then after that, they would be given a stipend for the calls that they made. It was not a lot of money per call.
So what I understand from conversations with the chief and Daryl is that this list would be submitted by the fire chief to the assessor's office. And based on the category of the number of calls they've attended, there would be some sort of a reduction in their taxes. So it would be separate from the point system, but related to it, but directly related to taxes, where the current point system, they just get a check from the fire company, you can use it.
That
in any-
makes sense. Okay, I got you.
does that match up?
Yes, it does.
And
Okay.
that's pretty normal in a lot of other towns that there's like a municipal tax break if you're a volunteer fireman.
Lou, was there any kind of amount that you guys were looking to add to the budget for that program?
For the firefighters,
Yes.
I believe it was 29,000. I don't have that with me. I believe it totaled about 20. Yeah, that's not what, yeah, what,
That was a listed number. Okay, all right. I just want to make sure I was understanding what the program, it's a tax relief program versus a stipend that you're gonna get cash for going to call. It's similar, but it's just another added thing that incentivizes going to calls.
we basically viewed it as a great program, in a way to try to retain individuals in the firefighter. But,
This is a mandate by the state of Connecticut, and it's for the elderly that, can't afford, and if you look at the income levels, it's pretty sad. No one could live on that amount of money. So our charge, when we looked at it, and we actually reported out and we contacted other towns in the New London area to see if they are participating. A lot of them do participate, but they don't add anything extra to it. Some do by maybe $500. But we looked at it in terms of, again, our town, the need, how can we help? And so our major focus was on this circuit breaker. Again, like I said, the fire department really isn't on our radar, so to speak. But what we are doing is just supporting that program as it was presented to us. So it's just another way of saying that there are other programs out there, and we're looking to help support those elderly that can't afford to stay.
oh, good.
Oh, okay, thank you for that. So we'll try to keep this request down to the $80,000 then. This other documentation
That's-
around the,
That's what we're talking about, the
Okay.
circuit breaker program.
okay, thank you. Was there any other parts of your presentation you'd like to talk about tonight, or?
Well, the only other items would be things that we presented here that as we looked at the overall scheme of things, especially at page 7, 8, and 9, we talk about some additional programs that we think the town should consider. We recognize that some of these programs would need changes actually in even state law, but nonetheless, we thought it important for you to take a look at these and to understand how implementing one, two, all of these or some of this might benefit the individuals in North Stonington, the taxpayers in North Stonington.
So is it fair to say, Christine, that some of these changes wouldn't be our remit? It would be
Correct.
charter changes or whatever it is. Okay, all right.
Okay.
Does that conclude your presentation?
Unless, well, with the committee's permission, I think one of our committee members, John Olson, presented or put together much of the information that's found on pages 8 and 9. And John would like to talk about those issues at this point. Is that?
Oh, sure. It's part of your remit. That's great.
It is in our report, yes.
something that I had presented years back. Oh, into the notes. Can you do this?
It's the tall guys.
Yeah. Yeah, is that better? No? All right, let's do this. I'm used to this. This is a whole lot easier.
That's perfect.
Okay. On those pages, it presents the concept of a municipal fee for services as opposed to a mill rate based tax system. It's used in different places. It's included in this report. I do not have and did not have enough accurate details of lot numbers and assessments. The grand list came out just a few days before our 60 days were up. So the math in here is not as accurate as it could be. I intend to continue to work on that and get it in more detail, especially when it comes to the potential economic impact for the town to propose this change.
I'm sorry, what pages are we looking at? 8 and 9, okay, thank you.
It's titled, Establish a Payment for Services System in lieu of Property Taxes, Municipal Fee for Services. I don't know if you've read this section of the report or not, but basically what it does is it's a mindset change. Because what you do is you assess a mill rate after you figured out what the cost for the services of the town to the townspeople are. Based on the assessment of their property, you then establish a mill rate and tax the residents. But the concept of what you're presenting is a way to derive money to pay for the services delivered to the town. If you take the services delivered to the town, I presented it in 3 different examples of how that could be divided. Granted, these are not fully fledged out examples. They're just a quick synopsis. If you took the cost of the property tax assessment times the mill rate in the previous year, you raised just over $17 million in property taxes. If that was to be equally, in example A, equally divided per lot in town, because the services are rendered, for the most part, many of them, equal to all lots, it would come out to approximately $5,000 per lot per year, as opposed to the spread of taxes, which range from 0 per lot up to over 31,000. So the spread of what residential customers are paying, sorry, not customers, but residents are paying for the same services provided to each of those individuals equally is quite disproportionate. So in example A, if you took the town budget, subtract out all the other revenue sources, you'd know how much revenue you needed. If you divided it by the number of lots, that would actually be the fee per lot. The bills would be equal, everyone paying an equal amount for the services. In example B, it would be taking the lots and dividing them by their function, whether they're a commercial lot, a residential lot, could also separate perhaps agricultural lots, and then set a certain rate for the service provided to that lot and divide them by how many of them there are. That's a second way of doing it. The rate would be different, but the price per type of lot would be the same. For instance, when you have a lightning strike, doesn't matter if it's an empty field, a small house, a large house, fire department comes and puts the fire out. It's a heart attack. Doesn't matter where it takes place. The service is the same, rendered regardless of the location where it takes place. Example C is the most different. It's also the one that would require the most bookkeeping. And that would actually, in order to truly divide the bill for the services rendered to the people who receive the benefit from it, then you would take something, for instance, in the example there I gave, was if you had water and sewer, it would only be divided in the cost of it to some lots, those that receive the benefit. School buses, same way. Highway department, all the roads, everybody pays equally because the same service is provided. The landfill, divided equally to all lots because all of our refuse goes there. So that would require the most amount of bookkeeping. Those are 3 different examples of ways that municipal fees for services could be rendered. One of the benefits is that, and we heard it earlier, where there's people that come to the town meetings and they discuss and dispute whether to raise the taxes or not. If everyone is paying equally for their proportionate share of the services rendered, then it's just a question of, do we all agree to raise the fee for the service, as opposed to someone voting no because they're paying 3 times as much as someone else for the same service provided. That's often a debate that takes place at our town meetings. The other benefit that would take place, and I mentioned this at the end, is you could institute a system called MAP, Municipally Assisted, a Municipal Assistance Program. The funds that we pay for the circuit breaker program for the senior citizens, the veterans, and for the disabled, we're now funding those now anyway. If you set up a municipal fund that's set up as a charity, the money that comes through the town and benefits those individuals would qualify as municipal assisted housing. It has the potential, once it's verified and authorized, to be considered affordable housing, just like a CHFA loan is registered. It would no longer require deed restriction to qualify. That needs to be looked into further. Any charitable deductions made to that organization, that MAP fund, could be charitably deducted off of someone's income taxes and go through the town as municipal assisted housing. It would also register that way. And any fundraising activities could also be used. These are all tax relief strategies for those that, if you equalize the bill, or however you of the 3 choices you potentially choose, you would then have the opportunity to assist these people. You would register more as affordable housing units in town. You wouldn't have to build apartment complexes to accomplish the goal of reaching the 10%. You would also then, with the better numbers that I have yet to receive, be able to determine how many people would be impacted. Certain people's taxes would go up, other people's would go down. As of the numbers I received recently, the majority of the people in town pay between $3,000 and $7,000 a year in their taxes, but that range, like I said earlier, is as low as 0 and as high as 31,000 plus. So once those numbers are properly determined, we could assess how many people need the assistance, how many people would be benefited by equalizing the bill. That's still yet to be determined, but it's something for a future consideration. So I didn't want the evening to go by without that being at least openly mentioned. Questions?
Yeah, just very different way of looking at things, right?
Certainly.
So your suggestion is everyone pays the same, regardless of the size of the house, the size of their property, anything. So it's interesting, but obviously a very, very different path that would require far more horsepower than what this board can provide. But yeah, it's a big one. It's a big one.
I have
As it's stated in the report, the premise is we're currently taxing people based on their property assessment,
Right.
which is either
And the value of that
money
property.
it's money already spent, or money not yet realized because it's based on what the price might be if they sold it today. It changes from year to year.
Yeah.
But in both cases, neither one is based on the person's ability to pay. It's not an income-based system. It's based on money already spent or not yet realized.
I have a question about the municipal assistance program. Who manages that? Is that managed by the town?
It would go through the town if it's a municipally assisted program, yes.
So the town sets up a MAP fund.
A MAP fund,
They can put their own money in, like the 61,000 for the circuit breaker, but they can also
receive donations.
fundraise.
Fundraise, receive donations.
It's interesting. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
John, is there anywhere in the country that does this type of program?
Not to the full extent that I've brought all these together, no. I searched nationwide and also internationally and collected portions of these programs and put this together.
Um, it seems to me that if you did this by, lot, it could disproportionately harm those folks that have less valuable homes. Meaning the people that you're trying to help are going to be paying more taxes because it's just separated by lots, and the person that has, the huge house or the big, a lot of property or whatever, is going to pay less. And I understand where you're coming from. I've listened to your arguments over probably, the last 10 years from now.
It's over a decade.
Yes, at town hearings, and I feel, and I feel for you. There's a lot of things that kind of make sense here. But I don't know, I mean, if it's not being done anywhere, it doesn't seem like, this kind of flat tax type of mindset is really gonna work. And, I'd be reticent to say, hey, we're gonna be the first one to try it. But more importantly, my fear of those people that have houses that are less than, your 628, per month, per year. If you spread that over, if we had
If-
3,444 lots.
May I interject for a second? That 628 is based, you're reading a portion where it says if there were no other municipal revenue.
Right.
We have municipal revenue from other sources. I gave an example of if there were none, and then
Yeah.
what it would be after. So after our revenue that we already receive is deducted from that number, it brings it down to $400.24. Sorry, $424 per month.
Okay. Which is what, like 4,800 per year
Yeah,
roughly?
about 4,800. And the majority of taxpayers in town pay between 3,000 and 7,000 net. So it's not much different.
$1,800, could really kill somebody as far as taxes are concerned.
Yes, I understand what you're saying, but there are already people who are already in that category who are being taxed the extra 2,000 to 5,000 who are in the financial situation. That's the part of the equation that's not in the way the system works now. There's no assessment of the person's ability to pay. You wouldn't know that until you set them with the bill. So there are people now who are paying that extra that the person with a lower valued house that may have a huge bank account already has. Just because their house is smaller and someone else has a larger house doesn't mean that they have the extra 2,000 to pay.
Okay.
Especially the senior citizens that have lived in their houses and their spouses have passed away and they don't want to move.
You all set, Mike?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, John.
Okay.
Oh, appreciate that. Thank you.
Any other questions?
No, it was, it's an interesting concept, and then we'll have to see what, if that was ever to be explored in greater detail. It wouldn't be by this body, I don't believe, though, so.
Would anyone be willing to volunteer after this season is over to continue to work on this with me to flesh out these proper numbers?
We're going to be focusing on capital planning.
All right. I figured I'd ask.
No, appreciate it.
Very-
Thank you very, very much. Your chairman wants to speak?
I just wanted to say in conclusion, the one thing that we are recommending as a committee is that we expand the circuit breaker program and make the income adjustments as we presented. And that is really what we're recommending right now for immediate action. And
Thank you.
we think it's supported and we hope you consider it as well.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Oh,
So
go ahead.
I just want to clarify or just make sure that I'm understanding. So we already have policy in place to manage the program as it is today.
Yes,
So we would,
it's a state mandated program and it's been operational for a number of years.
so the application process and all of that, we already have. So we're
Everything
just
is in
talking about
place.
changing the financial components of it, and it's not a major administrative change.
it's hardly a change at all, just a
Okay.
change in the income levels.
That's what I wanted to
Yes,
clarify.
all the
Thank you.
bookkeeping, all the setup as mandated by the state is in place.
Thank you.
Anything else for, oh, Gary, go right ahead.
No, it's for Christine.
Oh.
So in the town budget, the circuit breaker program exists where?
So when the assessor's office calculates the exemptions, so we have a grand list number and then we have the net grand list. So when we have the grand list, everyone's calculated in at what they would be expected to pay without any exemptions. Then we have the net grand list and that takes out this along with farm and forestry and all the other
Okay,
exemptions.
so there's not a line item for it.
It's not a
baked
line
into the
item.
grand list.
There is no reimbursement from the state. We have not been funded on this program since
2016.
2016.
Okay, thanks.
So if we accept this or go for it, that list has to change for this fiscal year.
So the list would change. Next steps would be that you would make the recommendation to the Board of Selectmen. The Board of Selectmen would draft the ordinance, then it would move to town meeting, would need to be approved at the town meeting to be implemented for the upcoming budget.
So we'd be looking at 79, deducting 79,000 from income revenue.
A100, right?
Correct.
Thank you, Chris.
Is it realistic to think that those steps could occur before our scheduled town meeting?
Yes. We're already drafting we are already working on ordinance changes to incorporate in the annual town meeting, May 1st. So it would just be
Yeah.
adding one more to it.
Okay. Questions germane to this topic? Is that what? I'm gonna take them. You're gonna need the microphone though.
Okay, the state circuit breaker, which is mandated by the state, is supposed to be reimbursed by the state. Well, through our meetings, we found out the town hasn't been reimbursed since 2016 for that. The town's been evidently taking a hit. The local one, which we proposed, well, the state mandate by first of all, you only got to live in the state 1 year and you can apply for it. We had discussion at the meeting, and of course, you could probably guess who voted against it. I suggested that we have a length of time that a person had to stay in North Stonington or be in North Stonington before they could get the local circuit breaker, so to speak. I think that would be only fair because I don't think it's right for somebody just to move into town, be here 1 year, which is what they voted on, and reap a benefit off the taxes right away. I think it should be for the senior citizens that have been here for the long haul. My suggestion was 12 years. And the reason I said 12 years is going through one whole school, whatever you want to call it. 12-year school. 12, they paid taxes for 12 years and that was only my point of view of it.
So
Other
Brian,
towns do
that's,
have.
sorry, that circuit breaker to this circuit breaker isn't in place in this report. That's not what that's not
The
what this,
state circuit breaker is in place by the state and we have.
but I
it
mean
in
that,
town.
that 12-year resident.
No, there's
residence
other
town.
towns that have.
Okay. All right, I
And
guess I'm
we
just
can
trying.
We have the, a board of finance, you can accept this, you can scrap it, you could hash it over, you could add to it, subtract. That's all up to you. You're the board of finance. But it's been presented, but I want to let you know that, the length of time, I think is an important part for
Thank you.
our town.
Okay.
That's all.
Okay.
Thanks. I know you got a lot to do.
Yeah, no, it's, we want to hear from everybody where we can. I think there was one more. Yep, one more back there. If you step up, please.
And Pat Lewis, I had some concerns about only having to live here for 1 year as well. I also wanted to make sure you have to be a resident. and
Please,
claim-
stay close to the
you have
mic.
Be a resident and stay and claim taxes in the state of Connecticut. Or you can't be a snowbird and come back here and and get this exemption, can you? And pay taxes in the state of Connecticut?
So I guess I'd ask, we're gonna stick to this report. We're not gonna try to debate it or change it.
Yeah.
This is a report presented.
Well.
I'd like to
if-
stick
and
with
tell
that,
the
please.
truth. I thought we were gonna try to help the elderly and somebody who's lived in town and paid taxes for 30, 40, 50 years. And to me, this is nothing. Why not do something for these people who paid all these taxes, who are over 65 and like Old Saybrook does, freeze your taxes when you're 65. We need some kind of other incentive. This is not an incentive to give any relief to.
I'm sorry, were you part of that committee?
No.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you. Anything else? Well, no, this isn't public comments. It's, I think we're all set for, that presentation. Thank you for that. We'll go ahead and move on to the business of the night, and that's more discussion around our budget this year. So lots of discussion last week, this week. I guess I'd like to bring it back to, if everybody's okay with that. What is the additional revenue again, Christine, for that we have to support initiatives in the town?
$512,622.
Thank you. So that's kind of what we have available to us.
Can I just wanted clarification,
Okay.
if you don't mind, Paul.
Sure.
Because I wrote down a number that was the delta that we would need 29.5 mils to cover. Was that numbers
So,
634, 398?
so right now we are, the current expenditures exceed the revenue by $619,202. 619,202. If the mill rate was at what it is right now with these expenses, we would need another $619,202 of new revenue or less expenses.
How do you come to that one? Where's that math come from?
Out of the 1.1 million, less the 512, I believe.
Mhm.
The 619 is the only number I had, so thank you.
Yeah, so
I knew it wasn't right.
the total ask,
16th, right? I mean, the delta on the front page of the budget is 1,147,020.
Change from last year's expenses. yeah.
Right. And if you minus 512,622, you get 634,398. I don't get where you're getting 619,202.
I'm getting it from my spreadsheet, so let me double check some things.
Okay.
it's about a $10,000 difference though, so I'm not sure.
It's gonna change that 29.5 because we only had 7,900 left over from that.
Yeah,
Percentage points kind of matter.
no, I just don't know how like germane it is to like moving the conversation forward and.
I want to be able to have a starting point.
Yeah, sorry, I'm not saying we don't get it.
Checking the calculations in the spreadsheet with the
I'm
512.
not here to argue with you at
No,
all.
no, I just try to multitask too much.
I got you.
I want to keep having the conversation while she's doing the math. but
Right,
I
right.
realize that's not necessary.
Well, I guess you can make a conversation if Paul still feels like, the 512,622 is all you're gonna get, then that's a lot of ask to take away.
I think that is the starting point, right? And so now we have the more discussion, but I just wanted to ground us there first. You went to step 3, I'm still on step C, but as soon as we get that number, we'll get there though. Yeah. Yeah, no, that's way. Yes.
Just For
You,
clarification.
you're gonna have to bring that mic, well, I think.
While we're talking about numbers.
Yeah.
Are we touching the 79,000 from the tax relief change or are we not? Or is that like step 5?
I think that was step 3, but yeah,
Oh.
well, we'll get there. Yeah, because I think we have to talk about that. That's a
Okay.
really underrepresented group. I'd like to have that discussion, but first, in my mind, tell me I'm all wet, but I want to know how much new revenues we have first. I think I got that number.
Well, according to the budget that we have in front of us, it's 512,622.
Right, and the arithmetic she's doing is just that difference right now. So we can start there. So let's chat. So that 512 for me should be our target. That would mean that would mean increases across both boards, maybe even something for the tax relief committee, but working within our means, within the dollars that we have coming in without any more burden to the taxpayer. Now we can continue that conversation and see if, what motions might come out tonight, but before I made that, I wanted to keep the chat going, that's all. You got the hot mic, Mike.
Yeah, I don't see how you're gonna ask the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Education to cut out $634,398 from their budget. I'll just take the Board of Education budget. Their delta right now is 768.15. Out of that delta, $655,799 is salaries. And that leaves 105,016 for everything else. So I just, I don't know where you're gonna ask them to cut. Having, my wife's in education and the importance of paras. It can't be understated, in my opinion. It's not big dollars to have that kind of support. I'm certainly don't think that we on this board are the experts as far as, what they need for that kind of support and special education. We certainly don't know. And we know that the extra social worker, Troy's gonna die if we don't give him that. Literally. Yeah, for some reason, my email is not giving me them.
Yeah, I struggled with that,
Yeah, why don't you?
that table in
Christine?
there, because
Yes,
I
please.
looked at it, I couldn't make much sense of it. Yeah, it was just kind of scattered.
Well, it wasn't,
Yeah,
it
it
didn't
wasn't
line up
aligned or anything.
properly
It
on
was really
our
weird.
phones, so.
Probably not.
So to clarify, do you want me to start? Let's start with the questions that pertain to the budget. That's what I'd like to focus on. The non-lapsing is really clear. We've told you guys several times where the savings came from, and that table just illustrates that. For the wood shop, there's $5,000 in our budget for the wood shop. The rest of it is being covered through the non-lapsing account. Before we exited the old building, we packed up all of the handhold wood shop equipment and have it in storage. Mr. Bradnini and Randy have done numerous walkthroughs and tried all the equipment, and it's all functioning properly. The $5,000 increase is to cover the price of lumber that was added for our instructional supply. That would be an ongoing year after year cost. The machines in the wood shop are not all from 1950. In fact, many of the larger machines were purchased with Perkins funds and did not even cost the town anything. Other than getting a few tables back in there and cleaning out the stuff that was stored in there, there is no other operational cost necessary. Mr. Bradnini will use that workshop once a day, every other day, first semester with his materials processing class, and second semester with his set design class. No additional staffing and at no cost other than using a space that is vacant and with expensive machinery right now is not being utilized. The alternative ed. One thing to note on that is if we aren't moving forward with that program, we did put about 50 to 60,000 in the budget for the special ed teacher. That teacher would not just be at the alternative ed program, but also be used throughout the entire district. If we take that out, we have to put $50,000 back into our tuition line item. Typically, schools have many tiers of programming like this with an alternative education program offsite. Although it can be housed in a school, it usually is in an area that has a wing off to itself, which we do not have the space for in our new building. We are not at capacity in our new building for regular education. By any stretch, we are not at capacity. We are not asking for extra space because we've outgrown what we have. We're looking for an alternative education space. Off-campus programming typically costs districts rental fees, but we have the old building and we could utilize the space we already have access to. Right now, we do have a tier 2 program in our schools for students in a hybrid model, attending classes and doing some online work. They are at Wheeler in our office conference room, closets, and spaces we can utilize, but the building was not built with this in mind, so we are making do. Across the street is a place we would rotate expelled and suspended students for 2-week intervals or more, but also utilize for alternative ed. Alternative ed, being close to school, is very important. Students in this program are isolated from the main population for a reason. However, by having them close by, it allows us to utilize some of our existing staff for support. For example, our school psychologist, social worker, and support staff can simply walk over. There are no transportation fees associated with this, and it keeps the financial burden down. Almost every school around us has this kind of program, but not inside of their school building. Griswold has the 2 tiers like we do, but their alternative education is off-site and separate from the rest of the students. Having behaviorally challenging students be able to work across the street has positively changed the Wheeler school environment. The teachers appreciate less behavioral issues and distractions in their classes. The administrators have more time to support teaching and learning when they don't have to chase students in the hallways or track them down in the bathrooms. The regular education students feel more comfortable in classes, hallways, and bathrooms with this change. When the main office has to be used to discipline students or as an alternative workspace, it takes away from the work that should be happening at that level. By keeping those students close by, it allows us to service their needs in hopes that they do not end up in outplacement, which is a large financial, actually a huge financial burden to the town. This came from the administrators, signed by Mrs. Kristen St. Germain, who knows education way better than any of us would ever say that we could tell you how to do it.
Thank you for that. Did you want to continue, Mike, or can I hop back in or anybody else?
I'm just, we're talking about going back to where we were 2 years ago, going from 28.45 to 29.5. I mean, we're pretty lucky that we have this, we have the revenue increase that we have. And I think we've done a really good job in the last, during COVID and all those times when we were able to keep the tax burden down using the undesignated fund for those couple of years. And then being fiscally smart about closing that gap that we created for ourselves by using that undesignated fund, when we had the opportunity. And even last year, I wasn't necessarily for it, but lowering the taxes a little bit, gave our, citizens the reprieve. At this time, in my opinion, these budgets are sound. I'd like to see, I do have some, I'll save this for afterwards, but, some suggestions with regard to the capital fund. But, I don't, if we're going to add the 79,000 or take that away from the revenue part, that's, I'd like to keep us in that 29.5 and maybe ask for some modest decreases here and there from both the Board of Ed and the Board of Selectmen to keep us in that space, but no big wholesale slashes. That's my opinion.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you. Sure.
Okay, so when we set the mill rate at
Oh.
28.45, we had a delta that would go above and beyond because we didn't set it to a third decimal point. So that $15,196 is budgeted to go back into the undesignated fund, and that's what that difference is. So it's been a year, so it's cobwebs.
Just so we're clear, the 634, 398 would be reduced by the 15 to get us to the 619.
Yes, so right now with these budget figures we're working with at the 28.45 mill rate, we would need to reduce 619,202 or find that in new revenue. And then again, if we were to change the mill rate to anything else, there may be a delta that is going to go back into the undesignated fund because of the rounding.
Right. And just so we can go over that. When we talked about this last time, it was 29.5 mils. If there was no other changes,
That would
would
give
leave
you-
$7,900 back,
Exactly.
going back to the undesignated.
So you're both right. Great.
I love it when we're both right.
It's a win-win, that's right. Okay, so we're still back here. So I'm gonna ask another question about revenue, not the same one, a different one. There is some potential for a little bit of money coming to the state that we won't count, but it's around 80 grand potentially. You don't have to answer that on mic, but it's just 70, okay. So that could be kind of added into our, assuming the state gives it to us. So for me, I do want these budgets to go back to the boards. Now, I would like to see them go back into the tune of keeping the increases for the Board of Ed at 350, for example, and the increases for the Board of Selectmen at 250. That puts us around 600 in the ballpark of not raising taxes, but it probably is going to result in something. Both receive increases, but we are living within our means. I'd like to hear some talk on that. I'm not ready to make that motion yet. I want to keep the conversation going. We've only been here an hour. We got a lot of time to go.
Or
Just threw out a number of 350 for increase for the Board of Ed and 250 to be separated in some ilk. Oh, sorry, thought that was for me. Okay, and then you want us to help you? And 250 for the Board of Selectmen to be separated as they desire. That's my numbers in my head to keep the tax burden, no increase, but increase in expenditures for both main boards.
So just so you can clarify it in my head, you're gonna give. Oh, this is capital, so all right, so 250. Okay, versus whatever it is,
382.
385.
Yeah.
I don't
I-
think that that approach is in tune with what the town is asking for this year. I've sat with us through many times when that was the message. Where people were calling and writing and that was what we heard. That is not what has happened this year. I think we owe it to the voice that the town has given us to respect that.
Yeah, and I agree. The 20 voices that we've heard are certainly not saying that, but that's just less than a
We've-
percent.
And we've made decisions on that in the past when it agreed with
Right. No, I
what
get you.
people on the board wanted to hear. So that's,
I'm with you. I'm with you.
I don't know that I'm with Mike. I think we need to talk about, I think we could probably get consensus on the tax program, which might be a nice win, right? To have that conversation first, because I think most of us, or at least I can say I'm in agreement that I would like to help make sure we're not taxing people out of their homes, right? So I think that's a good thing to do. But I wouldn't be interested in anything more than modest adjustments to accommodate that at this point.
So I think what's good about in my mind, but what I'm proposing, these get the budgets back in their hands. They can make adjustments. It may not be what I'm asking for here tonight, but it goes to the next step. To accept this like it is, it would be a hard no for me. Again, in my one vote, but, that's where I'm saying. I have to get these budgets back in the hands of the boards at those suggested numbers, knowing that that's the floor. And then we'll see what happens, because we still have to make that adjustment I believe, for the tax relief committee. I'm not sure what that all looks like yet. I'm still trying to wrap my head around that. Mike.
I just want to put your proposal in perspectives. So we know from the Board of Education budget that $655,799 is for salaries. So your 350 means you're saying no to the 173,000 for the new positions, which one is the social worker, one is a special ed teacher. And there are a special ed para and 2 paras at the elementary school for that 173,000.
And the wood shop.
And the wood shop of 5,000. So that leaves, if we you take those positions out, now we're at 482,799. So we got to cut salaries by 130,000. And the 105 for everything else is gone. That's your proposal.
My proposal is for a number. And I would leave it to the,
I'm giving you the reality of your proposal,
okay,
just so we're all clear.
yeah, it's number is what I'm suggesting here, what those specific items, roles
Well, we know what it is.
I don't think is absolute, but maybe it is. Go ahead, Gary.
Yeah, I'd like to see what the decisions would be. I know we've been told time and time again what we would do. And I don't think you're bluffing, Troy, but when you say you'll die on this hill, I'd like to see if we kept it flat, how would you fund that extra social worker? I mean, no, I don't want to get into the details of your budget. It's your budget to manage, but from the town's perspective, if we were to keep it flat or approximately flat to what the revenue increase is, what would it look like? I don't think it's an obscene question to ask.
I think at this point, the frustration is the process. Moving forward, if we're going to go through this entire process, bring you what we know is solid, maybe in the future, you just say, here's where we want the mill to be. It's going to be flat. Work on it. Because this is what we need to manage this school. I don't have you have the budget. I know, Paul, you don't want to look at the line items, but please do. Because you will understand, as Mike is understanding, there's only 2 places it's going to come: salaries and the new positions that we desperately need. There is no other magical place to go. So if the board decides from the beginning of this process, we aren't raising the mill rate, we aren't raising taxes, and we know that up front, save us the heartache and the pain and the agony. Moving forward, this isn't making sense to me. It's not logical to me.
So the alternative approach could be for both the town and the Board of Education annually to say, you all know what the revenue increase is as you're building your budgets. You roughly know what the split is between the Board of Education and the Board of Selectmen. Bring us what you're aspirational, and bring us flat. And we could skip this whole process. But what seems to happen, and I've only gone through this is only my second time. Everybody knows what the increase is. The Board of Education approaches the increase, and the Board of Selectmen approaches the increase, and then we have to decide who gets what. Why can't we do this collectively? It's one budget. It's the town's budget. And collectively absorb the increase in revenue and then what you'd have what you would ask for if you could increase the mill rate.
I understand what you're saying. I guess I feel like that's saying that what we're asking for isn't what we need. And what we're asking for is what we need.
And what the Board of Selectmen asked for is what they need. And collectively, it's more than we have coming in. So we're just gonna push it on the taxpayers and say, this is what we need, lump it.
We're not pushing it on them. They have a right to vote. It's a voting process.
Thank you for those comments. And I think what you suggested about us coming with just a number, that's kind of been in my mind too. So maybe, I don't know what future boards might suggest, but maybe that's a change that would happen. I don't know. Sarah, please go ahead.
I agree that it should go to so one of the things that you said earlier was like the 20 people we've heard from. I mean, if it goes to town meeting, then significantly higher, so we actually get. I think that's our process, that's our town.
So if we did take the process of just submitting the budgets from the experts of both those boards, then why do we need the Board of Finance? Really? Then basically we would all get our January through April timeframes back and we wouldn't have to be the oversight board to be the checks and balances for the town and the taxpayers. This is our job. They have a process. They run the Board of Ed and the Board of Selectmen run the rest of the town and the capital. They come to us. This is the process. We're an oversight board. Plain and simple, guys.
It is our job, and it can also be a decision at certain times to move things forward. Like, it's not abdicating your job to make the decision that it can go forward.
But using the statement of, well, 20 people said basically move it forward, we should move it forward. That's not.
No, I'm saying the tone of the town right now is that they want more services in their budget. That's what everyone has said.
It's the tone of 20 people.
I've sat on this board where we've heard lots of people say 20 or less. I can't afford it. I need the budget to be lower. And we've listened to that. Nobody said, oh, it's only 7 people saying they can't afford it, so we're not going to listen to them. Right?
Just, we need to go through the process. This is why we're here. We need to discuss it. We need to come up with a number, like Paul was saying, and Gary was saying, we need to come up with a number to give back to both those boards.
We need to come up with a number. The number does not have to necessarily be lower. Like, it's not an
Then-
abdication of our role to say that
Then
we
put-
agree with this budget.
Then put forth a motion. Somebody put forth a motion. Let's get the.
I'm ready to.
One other thing first.
Go ahead. We'll have discussion once the motion's. up.
Winoma had stated before that every time these people come to with a budget, we always tell them no, that we send it back to them. So at what point, since we've got them down to trying to trust us, are they gonna start adding another percentage to it so that they can get back to them, so they'll get what they want? That's what I would be afraid of.
So I think that's fair, but I think we know what we can afford to give. So
Right, we
it's-
only have so much money to spend,
There he is. There it is.
but
Yeah.
also at some point, if we keep keeping it flat, where are we gonna end up at the end of the 4 or 5 years down the road?
Again, no one's suggesting flat. We're gonna spend another 600 grand of new expenditures. That's not even what was actually spent last year in some areas, but it was what was approved last year. So there is gonna be increase in operation budgets.
So they have to drop, there's 1.2, they have to drop 600, they have to take 600,000 off their budgets. collectively,
collectively, that's right. That's
I don't know.
my motion shortly on one vote. We're gonna see what the board feels, you know? So I am ready to make that motion. So, Christine, help me if I phrase this incorrectly. I want to make a motion that the Board of Education increase be $350,000 down from the 760. And then the Board of Selectmen increase to 250 down from 380 and change. I'd be looking for a second. Second. Paul made the motion, Gary's second. Discussion. Hearing none. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, discussion would be. What happened, yeah, I mean, we could play this game for 3 or 4 days. I don't think they've got it in there to take out, myself personally. So I'm gonna be on the other side only because I can't see where they can, where they can take it out of there, looking at all them numbers in there.
No, that's,
So that's.
everybody has their own vote. This is a
Okay.
democracy, so no one's gonna push anybody to one direction or the other. Again, this is the initial budget pushback to the boards for their sharpening pencils. Nothing's done here tonight. They're gonna come back to us with another number, hopefully. Monday or Wednesday, I forget what day, Wednesday, thank you. And we'll talk about it some more. I
I have a
mean, I'm a
question.
realist. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Has the budget ever been brought to the town, just as is? I'm curious.
I won't
Did anyone
say
hear
yes.
the question?
Has the budget ever been brought to the town as is? I mean, what's the,
I don't know the history of that. Not since I've been here, no.
I've been in town close to 11 years now and no. It's always had some tailoring, some sort. I've seen it go to multiple referendums because it was too high and not have it passed. Or at some point, it has gone through multiple referendums because one way or another.
At that vote, do they have the opportunity to add to it in our town? In other words, they tell us, no, we're voting because it's not high enough. Has that ever happened?
That we did try, I believe, at one
So we're missing a step in the discussion.
Yep.
You guys would be voting to send it to the hearing, which is the opportunity for the public to have feedback as to whether they think the increase is palatable or think that it needs to have a reduction. Then you, as the Board of Finance, have the opportunity to then change the budget if necessary before it moves to town meeting. Yes, there has been a exit survey done in the past where people were asked whether if they approved the I don't know exactly how it was phrased, but basically,
Yeah.
if you did not vote yes, was it because it was too high or too low on both the general government budget and the Board of Ed budget?
all right, so in trying to understand this, so if we were to move it through to the town meeting, then that would be a chance for the whole town, as advertised, et cetera, to really come out without being said, okay, can you come to this meeting? And then that would be a general gauge for us to then have the budget back again, correct? At that
We will
point,
get it back. Yeah.
at that point, are there recommendations able to be made by us?
Are you saying town meeting or are you saying budget hearing?
Budget hearing.
Budget hearing, yes, there's opportunity, but so the budget hearing's on Monday, you meet on Wednesday to make any changes. And then the Board of Finance, the Board of Selectmen meet that Friday to send to town meeting. Yes, so the hearing is scheduled for Monday, the 17th. You have a meeting on Wednesday, the 19th, where you will evaluate the feedback you received at the hearing, make any changes to the budget. Then the Board of Selectmen will have a special meeting on that Friday to call the hearing the annual town meeting for Monday, May 1st. And then we would potentially adjourn to a referendum for the 15th.
If
That is the
changes
schedule
were
as
to
it
be made, how would that go? before?
What?
If changes were to be, I've never experienced changes made at that point. So I'm wondering how that would happen.
your board discusses it
Yeah.
and votes to do so.
Just like it has happened tonight. We've done that. So again, tonight, so you feel comfortable, everyone, I think we all know that this is not the end all, right? This is just a suggestion of, well, a motion to bring it back to the boards, see what they come back with, and this discussion will continue. It's not over by a long shot. Many, many more meetings.
All right, and if it doesn't pass tonight, where do we go from there? Just so I know,
We don't go
Where we're
anywhere.
at.
We sit here until
sit here
something
until
passes.
midnight or whatever we have to do.
And we come
Okay.
back tomorrow and at midnight again. Yes, that's exactly what happens. That's why this is part of the process. It's not the end. It's just, we're in the middle. You know,
I'm just afraid we're gonna run out of time with our time schedule that we have.
I think that's why we want to get the process going.
Okay.
Mike, go ahead.
Again, just because, you know, we're starting at a point where, you know, Dan, to your point, being the stewards, we've listened. Hopefully we've listened to these presentations and listened to, for instance, going now to the Board of Selectmen budget, Bob says, and I heard him, I'm sure you all heard him. If we do say, hey, you're gonna cut your budget by $130,000, you know where it's coming. Where it always comes, capital. And yet, 2 meetings ago, we all had a lively discussion, and I fully endorsed Gary's opinion that we need to have a policy where we're funding capital consistently and with a plan. And you're already right off the bat saying, not this year. I understand what you're saying. You want to, maybe throw them back into the room and see what comes out, but it's just not realistic to me. And so I can't support your motion, and I'm willing to talk about, trying to get some cuts here and there to reasonable cuts that still fully supports what these 2 boards are trying to do. But your level of cuts it's just a non-starter for them. And I just think when you negotiate from a point of, a non-starter, there's no negotiation. There's back and forth when it's reasonable, but there's, to start with something that's just unreasonable and unrealistic, we're not getting anywhere. And it's to say that we're supporting capital and then to say, hey, Bob, cut all your capital out of here. Or where it's gonna come. It's gonna, the library is gonna lose their money. They fought so hard for and that they deserve, that this town wants. So I just want to know, like, where do you think this money's coming from?
And that's the reason to push them back. I want to see the impacts. I know we talked about capital. I, for one, think there's other avenues to go, but we need to see the impact. And that's why this motion is ready for a vote now, unless there's more discussion to see where we are. And if it passes, we're done for the evening. If not, let's order pizza. So, any more discussion? Okay, we'll do it one by one. All the yays, vote. Sarah, how would you vote on this?
No.
That's 1 no. One was not seated tonight. Yes, 1 yes. I too am a yes. Mike Anderson?
No.
Gary? Yes. Carl? 3-3, the motion does not pass.
I'd like to make a motion.
Please.
Just have fun with motions tonight.
Yeah, it's gonna be a few of them.
Motion, commotion.
Yeah.
All right, I'd like to make a motion to adjust the revenue by $79,000 to accommodate the circuit breaker update as proposed, by the tax relief program. And I'd also like to ask the Board of Selectmen to reduce their budget by $40,000 and the Board of Ed to reduce their budget by $60,000.
There's a motion on the floor for, I'm not sure the impacts, but reduction of 40,000, you said, for Board of
Yeah,
Ed?
it equals $100,000. It makes up for the 79 plus.
Okay.
I'll second.
We have a first and a second. Discussion. So some clarifying points for me then. So, you're fully gonna fund the circuit breaker? Is that what you said?
Yeah, I mean, I worded it so that, because it's not really funding, it's adjusting the revenue, right? Because it would be a loss of revenue of about
Okay,
$70,000. But yes,
same kind of thing.
yes, it could be that it costs us a little more or a little less, but I thought that their estimate was reasonable.
Okay. And reduction to the big boards by 100,000.
Yes,
I'm sorry, you said 60 for the Board of Ed and
yes,
40 for the Board of Selectmen?
yes.
That's what I thought.
And if it passes, we go home, right?
It's true, that is true. Other discussion? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and take it for a vote. Sarah, we'll start with you.
Yes.
Vote is yes. Dan Smith? No. No. I too am a no. Mike Anderson?
Yes.
Gary Nino?
No.
Carl Johnson?
No, not at this time.
No. So that does not pass. Okay. So it was a tie, it was leaned to the no, but it still didn't pass. Okay, actually, I need 2-minute break and we can, do it again. Thank you. Okay, we can get started again if everybody is willing. I think. No, there's one more, sorry. I saw him in the hallway. Another minute, please. Okay, we're ready to get started again. Bob, I think when we broke, you wanted to say something to the boards?
Yeah, I just want to make a few comments since I couldn't do it when there was a motion, but now there's no motion, so I can. I gotta disagree with Dan Smith and his assessment of the Board of Finance saying that, why do we need a Board of Finance? Apparently, unless you cut, you don't think you're doing your job. My feeling is if we go through a process and we are doing our jobs, then why do we think that that the residents think you're not doing your job if you don't cut? So it's not the job of the Board of Finance to cut. The job of the Board of Finance is to assess what we gave you as budgets and think if it's correct or not and give us direction. Point one. Point two, to give us an unreasonable task to go back. We could come back here every Wednesday for the next 5 months because we're never going to get to the number you want us to get to. And without cutting teachers, cutting trucks, cutting capital, cutting people at town hall, we can't do it. So if we can't do that, why even have us go through the process? So give us a reasonable thing, something reasonable to work on, and we can do that. Maybe talk about maybe raising the mill rate by $0.5 or something and give us 800,000 to work with instead of 1.1 million, but give us something we can work on is reasonable. That would bring us from 28.45 to 28.95, still keeps us under 29, but gives us an extra 300,000 to put on top of the 512. That's reasonable. We can start there, but not what you're offering us tonight. And the third thing is, if we always are going to work on just revenues, then why don't we just keep the mill rate at 2.45 from now until eternity? It's always going to be that because we're only going to work on what we get for extra revenue, but we also have to keep expenses there. So nothing can go up over the next 50 years if we're going to keep the mill rate the same for the next 50 years. So if you can guarantee me there's no increase in expenses, then we can keep that mill rate at 20.45 for now until eternity. But we can't. You can't guarantee there's not going to be an increase in expenses. So that's unreasonable to only work on what we have for income coming in. Sometime, somewhere, taxes do get raised. I mean, we're not the only town that raises taxes on occasion. For 3 years in a row, we've lowered taxes. So there comes a time when sometimes you have to bite the bullet, raise it a bit and see what the people say. I mean, we had only 20 voices. But the funny thing is with the 20 voices, the majority said the same thing in support. And as Sarah said in the past, we've had 20 voices where the majority said, no, we're not doing it. We don't have any money in the till. There's never a good time to raise taxes, but there's times when it's necessary to raise taxes. And that's all I got.
I'd like to make a motion. Motion would be, the way Sarah stated as far as declining the revenue of 79,000 for the taxes and proposing the Board of Education try as close as they can get to lowering by 160,000 and the Board of Selectmen try and lower by 85,000 as close as they can get and bring it back to us.
Carl, can you please repeat?
I'm sorry? Selectmen 85, yes, please.
Everybody got those numbers, especially our secretary?
Yeah, I'll second that. 160.
160, yeah. So the motion is to fund the tax relief committee,
Yes,
reduce Board of Ed by 160
yes.
and reduce
Board
Board
of
of Selectmen by 85 for a total of $240,000 reduction.
as close as they can to do that for us.
Okay, that was Carl with a first, Mike with a second. Okay, we'll go down the row. Sarah, how do you vote?
No.
No for that. Dan, how do you vote?
No.
I too am a no. Mike Anderson?
I'm a yes.
Yes. Gary Anino? No. No, and Carl?
Yes.
The motion fails 4-2.
Is there an appetite to address the tax relief separately? On the board,
I mean,
if I made a motion?
yeah, I am in favor of that initiative. So, and that again, all has to come out of the pie too.
Right.
So it's gonna have an impact to other boards. So in my mind.
Okay.
Is there and there was a brief discussion, somewhat cryptic, about money coming back from the state. Is there anything to be discussed there so we can all understand what you were saying?
I'm not in place to discuss it, but I understand there's a number that is likely to come back, but there's no guarantees in life, right? So I don't know if Bob or Christina would care to address that.
It's in the governor's budget now, but the governor's budget isn't approved.
What's the number?
77?
So the number from what we last received was $70,283. And that's with some reductions in a few lines and an addition in a line. So just overall, the delta is 70,283.
And there's no way we could tie the additional funding for the circuit breaker if that comes through.
So no, this would just be additional revenue that comes into these specific line items. And you would have, because of the circuit breaker program, a reduction in the taxes that are assessed for the residents. So I don't necessarily think that you need to vote to adjust the revenue number because the town only votes on the expenses that are made. You would need to, as a board, make a motion to move the recommendation forward to the Board of Selectmen so that they can write the ordinance and it can be voted on at town meeting. So you would, from the recommendation of the board, move whatever forward.
Yeah.
So back to the revenue thing again. So we are counting some other revenues that aren't realized yet, right? NIPS, town tags for dumps.
There's no NIP funding in the proposed budget. We have an estimation based on landfill use, transfer station use, and that's how we came up, and we did lowball those numbers because we're instituting a new program, and so we don't want to spite ourselves and
Right.
overestimate. So we were very conservative. We didn't add in for the early learning center until we had a signed lease. So I think that the Board of Selectmen has been very conservative as to what that we put in for revenues because we don't want to have an unfair picture for the taxpayer.
But those revenues are in there, even though they're still fiction-ish, but they're likely.
What?
It's
No, he should-
Projections,
no,
not fiction.
Projection. Yes.
Can we get a idea of what some of those projections are?
So we have in there, 10,000 for bulky waste fees. We have,
This
20
is, sorry, just to confirm, this is possible revenue not in the budget.
no, this is in the budget.
Okay.
So what's not in the budget at this time is the bottle bill proceeds, which is the NIP money, because the selectmen haven't voted as to how they're going to use those funds. So we need a designation prior to putting it into the budget. It's a restricted use from the state.
Okay.
And what I was speaking about was not landfill, the transfer station badges, the stickers we're gonna sell.
Yep,
We
yeah,
haven't
so,
sold one yet, but we're projecting it to be some number.
yes.
But not-
So we put 25,000 in for the transfer station. stickers.
$40.
The Nelson household will also not be skipping their Saturday trip.
Right.
Tell my brother.
Can I make a motion? I don't know if this is gonna work or not, that we recommend to the Board of Selectmen, they take under consideration funding the circuit breaker program, additional 79,000, so they can prepare the paperwork to ask the town.
You stole my motion.
You
I'll
ha-
second it.
So you have to don't say the number, you have to recommend the program. Because the program needs to.
I
have
recommend the
noise.
program.
No, thank you.
We have a first and a second for the tax relief committee program. Any more discussion? Okay, let's vote on that motion. Sarah, how do you vote?
Yes.
Yes. Sorry, Ms. Fairbank. Dan, how would you vote for that motion?
Yes.
I too am a yes.
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 That was supposed to be my win.
I know,
Not
it's yours. Hey, we know, we know it's yours. We know it's yours.
I'll take the adjourn.
Yeah, we know it's yours. Okay, great. So that would start being crafted by the Board of Selectmen at some time and it'd be a town meeting topic. Go ahead, Mike.
You know, rather than, I mean, it just seems we're going on these arbitrary numbers here that I just want to have before we decide that we're gonna throw another number out there, for everyone that's voting to send this budget back to the Board of Education with a huge amount of cuts in it, to again, just discuss what's in their budget and where's it going. And if you have the opinion that they need to go back and let's just stick with, let's say, take the $105,000 out. Okay, let's say we ask them to take the $105,000 out. They still have $655,799 in salaries in the budget. That's above last year.
Sorry, what's the 105 accounting for?
That's, the total's 768,08. Minus 655,799 is 105 grand. You following? Their total delta for this budget compared to last year is 768, 815, right?
Right. Right.
And is that true? Am I looking at something different? It was 808 on our actual budget from March 16th.
Yeah.
What's the number?
It's in your purse, I think. No, Bob's got it.
I get what you're saying with the 655, that's salaries, but if you look at the actual, the proposed additional positions are 173.
Right, I was gonna get to that.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is salaries, but it's not just
Right, increases.
last year, right?
Right. So just so we're all on the same page, I just want to make sure that everyone's clear that the budget that is presented, there's $655,799 that is allocated to salaries. It's a hard number. But out of that 655,799, 173,000 is new positions. So if you want them to come in with some kind of flat budget, you are in essence advocating that there is no new positions. And I want you to when you're telling them to go back to that budget, that is what you're advocating. And not only that, you want additional positions cut. Does everyone realize that?
So I would say this, I mean, I challenge you on that. Since we're gonna talk about those numbers, are you concerned at all that they didn't spend $368,000 of their approved budget last year?
No.
That's the basis for me. Now that, with my 350, I'm suggesting, we're talking about a $700,000 increase, please let me, $700,000 over that increase of what they actually spent last year. Thank you very much. Brett, thank you. Just, and that's documents. Those are from our friends at the Board of Ed. So that's a real number.
I think that I understand that, but it was also very well explained why the last 2 years are an anomaly and that they are actually on budget this year.
Maybe it is, but we don't know that. We won't know it until the end of the fiscal year. So again, their projections, we don't know. So I know that at least 2 years, perhaps 3 years in a row, they didn't spend to the budget. I'm struggling with it, Mike. I hear you. I know the notes suggest that we're on track, but we're not going to know for a year.
Right.
So that's why I'm a hard no. And that's, I'm not going to move from that.
Paul, but I think, like I said, I was with you when we first started this, as far as the numbers for the non-lapsing account. If we look at what they're willing to spend out of one item things, and by the time they're down to the end of this year, they were down to 160 according to this. They added their 285. They're already gonna allocate another amount to it, and it's gonna drop it again. And that money didn't come from them. It came from savings that they couldn't account for during the budget when they made it last year, from what I can understand, if they're telling me that. So to me, when I first went with you with, yes, there's $385,000 they didn't spend, that's a lot of money that they didn't bring back. But as you look at the numbers, where they're putting it at and what they're willing to spend it on, I disagree a little bit with you. Okay?
No, please.
Okay,
And that's
thank you.
why we're here to talk this through. So that's great. But the numbers are the numbers. I mean,
Yeah.
they're actual, they're real. So we have a nice account for non-lapsing. I know no one wants to talk about it. It's a big number. It's taxpayer money just sitting there, not fully leveraged. We need to leverage that. Not in the future, now, during this budget, in my mind. Go ahead, sir.
No, I agree with Carl and I'm really concerned about the precedent that we're setting. Which, what's the point of having the non-lapsing if we're forcing them to spend it down? It's the same thing as if they just spent it down every year during the cycle. I think we can't punish boards for coming in under budget, and that's what this feels like.
It just feels like we made a mistake in the budget process.
Same.
They were too big. Now, for many reasons, I get you.
So
We need to
what
sharpen
would
our
have been the alternative last year? The majority of the cost savings was in healthcare. So should Christine and the board underestimate their healthcare costs because maybe they'll have savings and they don't want to get in trouble next year?
Isn't it several years, 2 years in a row for healthcare savings? I'm still trying to get my head around that too. I mean, I'm not saving money on healthcare. How is that happening? I guess, if you don't mind. Yeah.
I would welcome the opportunity anytime to come to the Board of Finance and talk to you about the non-lapsing. I think I've said that before. It is healthcare, 2 years in a row. There was a pandemic. I don't know if you missed it. I'm frustrated. I apologize.
As am I. That's not appreciated. But go ahead.
2 years in a row, we had to project healthcare. And because of the experience with the consortium, the way it works is it's based on experience. A lot of people weren't getting healthcare like they normally do. Other things came into alignment with that, and we experienced a much lower rate. You'll also recall in years past, we've asked to push the budget timeline forward because a lot of times we don't know those numbers this early on. It was healthcare. It's clear. The table I sent you, if you open it up on a laptop, and I apologize if it didn't open on the phone well, is very clear. It's healthcare.
Can you help me understand how is healthcare paid? Is it monthly? Is it paid once at the end of the year? Is it all kind of?
Could I would like to make a comment here.
No, go
So
ahead.
and I'm not familiar with the actually counting of that, but I am familiar with healthcare cost of insurance rates. And being in the consortium, the way that the cost of insurance rates are calculated, it's experience-based. So it's the number of people that participate as well as the claims that were actually spent by that group. And during the COVID pandemic, as Christine mentioned, a lot of people were not getting routine exams or testing done because quite frankly, there was nowhere to go and get them. So if you look at overall national expenditures on expenses per person, they were lower, excluding COVID costs, because people were not getting their normal routine exams and doctor visits. So what that does is it drives down the cost of insurance rates in the calculation. So if you keep the number of participants static, but the expense goes down, the cost of insurance per person goes down. And as what we saw happen for our group in the larger consortium, which is more than just the people that are at our school, the number may have stayed the same, but the expenses went down, so the overall cost went down per person. And that's where this $420,000 comes into play. If you take, and Bob mentioned this year too, so they're projecting a 5% increase in cost of insurance rates. So that's a typical increase year over year for the last 10 years. It's somewhere between 5 and 7.5% for this type of sector. But during COVID nationally, it was down. And that's what you're seeing. And unless you know the participant numbers and the actual expenses, you cannot account for what those COI rates are going to be on a year-to-year basis that are experience-based. They're called yearly renewable term, and they change every year.
Thank you for that. Christine or Bob, did the town see such an enormous reduction?
We're not a part of their consortium. We have a separate insurance. But can I ask a follow-up clarifying question to Winona? So for that, and to Christine, so you're getting your rates for the next year based on what happened in that year, and that's why you're not getting it until the end?
Yeah, so typically how consortiums or any annually renewable term, so group insurance rates are experience-based. And, there's a lot of unfair things that happens in that. So if you're looking at a group of employers that have a high percentage of women in their twenties, and everybody has babies like they did during COVID, the experience goes way high. The cost of insurance for everybody in that group goes high. And so what happens is, and I believe your insurance runs July to July, I think. So the insurance company looks at the experience for the previous 12 months and allocates that across what they think is going to be the experience going forward. And coming out of COVID, people are back getting their doctor's appointments and mammograms and all of these things that are expensive tests. So the projection going forward in the health insurance market is that we're gonna see what we call a hockey stick. So everything was down for 2 years and that is completely changing and it is experience-based. So if you have a bunch of men who don't go to the doctor, the experience is lower. You have women that are having babies, it's higher. And it all, at the end of the day, the experience drives your COI rates.
Thank you. That was very, very helpful. I've never understood this.
So I'll ask again, did you guys see a reduction in your type of a?
No, ours has had no reduction. We've just had increases and the major changes with us are the actual people that are working for the town. We went from people that were on two-person plans to family.
Yep.
So that's part of our increase.
Okay, and yours was what percentage?
We calculate, we don't have an actual, our cycle isn't until October, so we don't get anything anywhere near budget time. So we projected a 5% increase because that was about average for what we've had over the last few years.
And the Board of Ed, projection was percentage wise? 5% also.
The consortium that we're in, we have, it's basically, we're self-insured with a bunch of other school districts. We have a healthy reserve, so we don't necessarily have to, they're not going to raise the rates very much. And last year, our rates went down at the end. So they projected, when they did the budget, they projected for fiscal year 22, they projected an increase, well, because it's now doing it now, but in the end, because they had a good year, it went down. So that's why we had a 378,000 savings. So when we did the budget this year, we took that into account. So the budget for this year equals the actual for last year. So that's why, you know, we had the savings, but it's not in the current year's budget because we took the savings in the current year's budget. We lowered the budget this year by 400 and something thousand. So therefore the increase, the current year budget over the previous year was only 260 something thousand. But if we had regular health insurance, it would have been 600,000 like it is this year. So the savings in health insurance, yes, you could say they over budgeted. Okay, we over budgeted. And we passed in the savings now into non-lapsing, so we don't have to ask the town for capital expenses. So if we budgeted correctly, we would be asking you for capital now. So you got this money without raising the mill rate, and you funded capital and other educational expenses by the health insurance going down. And you got that funded without raising your mill rate. You got $400,000 in your non-lapsing without raising your mill rate. Sounds like pretty good to me.
Thank you. Okay, Mike, go ahead.
And we created this account that allows for 2%, which is less than what the state allows, in order for them to be fiscally smart with their money, should they ever have a surplus. They kind of had a windfall because we had a pandemic. The funds still have to be used for educational purposes, and they're using it for as judiciously as possible on capital projects, one-time things. You don't want to use the non-lapsing account for things that are, toilet paper and things that you should budget for that are expendable. I'm looking through, the only way that you can say that they're not going to cut teachers or cut the 4 positions is to say that you've over budgeted somewhere else in your budget. And I'm just looking through it, and it seems to me there's a lot of reductions to line items, where there's big ones. It's, medical insurance it's a more, where contract negotiations, because it's a contract negotiation year, they need to have funds there. Finally having some instructional supplies where there was, none in the last budget. Again, those are the fungible items that are, that's not really capital. But I suppose you could use the non-lapsing if you had to. There's increases in transportation, there's increased in for diesel fuel for the school buses. These are all, we all know that all these costs are going up. So that, to say they got to be flat or that they were over budgeted before, it's not true. The actual for 21-22 was 97,000. We're budgeting 98,000. They went down with electricity on elementary school because they have the solar panels, but they're up on high school, middle school, because we all know the rates have gone up. It seems to me that these budgets are solid. There's a lot of negatives where they could cut things. They can't use the non-lapsing account to pay for salaries. So, and there's not a lot of places here other than capital stuff that they have plans for them to use that account. So we're left with a budget. Again, 90% of it is for salaries. So if you want them to cut out 400,000 out of their $760,000 ask, it's salaries and those teachers.
So you said is it true we can't use monies from non-lapsing?
I'm trying to follow your train of thought there. You shouldn't be supplanting your budget in a non-lapsing account. That's not what it's used for. If you want me to pay a salary this year out of it, where do you want me to pay that salary next year? And then there's going to be an increase in that salary.
No, I get you. I mean, we've done something similar in our non-lapsing.
And
right?
also with our non-lapsing, we have to approve every expense. I guess we'd have to approve each payroll check every 2 weeks. You would never want to pay a salary out of something like that. We thought when we established it, it was set up for one-time expenses, things that the schools need that we don't want to go to the town for. Again, I talked about the grounds and the fields that are so necessarily needing work. We used to have that as an ask in the capital. We've removed that from there. And there are other items that we need as well. We talked about storage over here last time. We want to pull the things out of storage and not use this building. To Gary's point, we don't want to be using these buildings, but we need somewhere to store those things. So we're looking at those options. And we felt that's exactly what the non-lapsing was for.
So I'm hearing not can't, but don't want to, or shouldn't, just like our.
We cannot do payroll out of that account because we cannot accommodate for social security, taxes, all of those extra components. So logistically, we cannot, no.
Bob, go ahead.
Just so we talk about real numbers, can you tell us as the Board of Finance what the average median household would pay in additional taxes at a 1 mil rate increase?
No.
Can you?
No. Can you?
No, that's why I'm asking you.
We asked our tax collector, I
You're the
think.
Board of Finance, I think.
No, I think it's a tax, isn't that a tax collector thing? You got it. So it's gonna be, I think you turned it off.
On an additional 1 mil, if it was additional 1 mil, it would be an additional dollar for every $1,000 in assessed property.
That's
For
right.
example, if you had $200,000 in assessed property, it would be an additional $200 per year tax.
Right, okay, thank you.
I want to make a comment on the Board of Education budget, because right now, my daughter is sending emails out to friends and family, trying to raise money for her lacrosse team, and they did it for the basketball team. They raised a lot of money. And then they're doing it for the baseball team, so all the same kids are hitting their same relatives up. And, you know, my daughter's been hitting those same relatives up. It's kind of embarrassing that we're here in the North Stonington and we can't afford good stuff for our kids. I mean, that's because these guys are not putting the money in the budgets for these sports athletic programs. We're doing fundraising. Our kids are doing fundraising on their family and relatives to pay for this kind of stuff. Maybe it's a pay to play type thing. I don't know. I'd rather have that than, you know, have my relatives that don't even live in North Stonington, you know, feel guilty about not giving little Ellie $100 for her school thing. So it's like, there's things that, you know, you're asking them to cut out, and people that are involved in these programs, you know, we're already, you know, these fields should have been, you know, we could have had, you know, much better fields a long time ago if we funded these things properly. So I just wanted to throw that out there because we were figuring that out today, who to extort.
Please.
So I guess I would just like to entertain a discussion around what we're not comfortable with in going to the town meeting with the budgets as they are, knowing that if we hear from the townspeople, whether it's 20 or 393 that voted last year, or 690 that voted the year previous, if we listen to them, we take the barometer of the town and they tell us, no, we're in agreement with you, Paul. We want these budgets to be cut. Can't we then come back here the next week and say, Board of Selectmen, 200,000, Board of Ed, 400,000, and walk away? And we don't argue about where it's coming from. The townspeople told us that. So I want to understand, what's the harm in going forward with that approach? Because we have the opportunity to do what we're trying to do tonight.
So in my mind, that's our job. First, to sharpen the pencil, to get it to the townspeople. They could tell us, Paul, you're all wet, add another 2 mils of spending to that. We want to spend more on these initiatives, and we'll listen to that. But for me, it's a dereliction of duty by not asking these folks to go back and look at this a second time. In my mind, again, my single vote,
Yeah.
or 3 others.
So, Paul, I have to respectfully disagree. Just give me a second. Because the process works. So if we go and we say cut and it comes back, we go and we present, this is our budget. Yay, this is our budget. And then people can say, oh, well, I want this back and I want that back. And it's the same process here where we're arguing over, oh, well, it's only 20 people. So why would you add it back? So I'm very skeptical that if we cut first and then added, like there would be, it's the same process. We have to vote. You're telling me tonight you don't agree to put it forward because that's not enough people. So I'm just very skeptical that any change would be made.
Mike, go right ahead.
You know, I don't disagree with, you know, you saying, I think you need to go back and sharpen your pencils. I have a problem with go sharpen the dagger. That
I hear you. I want to see the impact, not the proposed impact. I want to see the impact by the number I suggested, or something we can all agree on. It doesn't look like we're agreeing on anything. No matter if it's as it is, that's a no-go. It's a non-starter.
Okay, I
Or
just
just
think,
the
I mean,
base.
to me, it's like you're saying, all right, you're gonna go back and give fake numbers on the 105,000 that's, or the non-salaried items. Let's throw out some non-realistic numbers because they're fluffing them. Or you want to see, them come back and cut salaries because you want to call their bluff on it. I mean, it's just, I just think it's disingenuous to say, go back with $400,000 cut out of what you want. When the salary increases with the new positions is 655. Cause you're telling them, cut those salary, we don't want those programs and we don't want those teachers, new teachers, and we want you to cut some other teachers.
I don't think it's unreasonable to ask. It doesn't mean that next week when we see it, we're gonna say, yeah, do that. I'd like to see what it would look like. That's it. I tried to ask last meeting, all the meetings are running together and evidently I was too premature in that, but here we are and we're asking again, getting the same. Nope, can't do that. There's nothing wrong with asking. It doesn't mean we're gonna act on it. Right.
And I don't, like I said, I don't have a problem with you asking them to go back and look at something, but your ask is not doable. So give them something that's doable.
Okay, we're gonna go to the selectmen. Selectman Mastriani. And then Bob.
Just want to give you, sorry. All of a sudden my phone jammed up. I know. All right, just wanted to, this is rough numbers and rough data, but it says that our average home value is $268,000, or $368,000 in North Stonington, which would be making an assessed value about 284. Sorry, I take that back. Based on, this is what happens when I have too many screens open. So based on the 368 as the average home value at the 70% assessment, the average tax increase based on what's projected increase would be about $284 for the average household a year. So I just want to give that number now. It's not exact,
Right.
but it's based on what we have.
And that's real estate, not cars and additional. Yeah, yeah. All right, Bob, go ahead.
Okay, so I'm gonna go back on the Board of Finance and what their job is. So Paul, you said your job, and I don't believe the Board of Finance job is strictly to cut. It's to listen to all the proposals, listen to what you're getting from public comment and make an intelligent decision. We can get any 8 people in here that can say, here's the revenue. You can't spend more than revenue. We don't need a Board of Finance to do that. We can do that on our own. What we need the Board of Finance to do is to sift through the presentations, to sift through the public comment and come up with an intelligent ask. Because what you're asking me for is not doing, you're negligent in your jobs by saying, go back. Why don't you just say 0 increase, which you did? We could have said that 6 months ago. So why are we doing that when we have intelligent people on the Board of Finance that should be able to go watch everything listen to what they've heard, watch the meetings. If you have to go back and watch it 2 or 3 times, you understand what's going on, and then come up with a decision that makes sense. What you're doing is not making sense. What you're doing is that's the easy way out. 0 increase is easy.
No one's suggesting 0 increase.
Well, you are, because you're saying all we can spend is what we brought in for revenue.
I'm saying
That's
it's-
0 increase.
Tax increase, but $600,000 in new spending. That's not 0. That's a lot of money.
No, I
So
understand.
live within our means.
But we didn't have
When
to
I-
go through.
When I get a raise, I don't spend twice my raise. I spend a
But
raise.
we didn't have to go through this.
Sorry?
But we didn't have to go through this process to come up with that scenario. As soon as you knew the revenue, we could have stopped
Then
the
dissolve
process.
the Board of Finance, Bob.
No,
wait.
No, I'm asking the Board of Finance to do their, I'm asking the Board of Finance to do their job.
And we're
All right,
trying-
I'm
we're
gonna,
trying-
I'm gonna respond to you, Bob, and I didn't want to get into your budget, but we got 25,000 for the service truck. The service truck only exists because the fire company got a FEMA grant for a boat. Why are we replacing that truck? That doesn't make sense to me. You got $40,000 going into the Hewitt Farm. Didn't we just spend $85,000 on windows over there? How much are we gonna spend on the Gallup House before we realize we could have just built a new one?
We didn't spend 85,000.
How much did we spend on the windows?
About 45.
Okay, so now we're up to 85,000 on a house that has a tenant that's paying what a month?
1,600, about 19,200 a year.
That's a long payback. Okay, I'm gonna continue on. The front end loader. There's a lot of front end loaders in town, a lot of them. None of them as new as the ones the town crew has. I'm not saying we should not do it, but I think we should go about it wisely because the older ones are here and running because people can maintain them. Buying a new front end loader for $200,000 that you need a computer tech to keep running makes no sense to me. And then, and I was past president of the board of the library for 10 years. And I was a trustee longer than that. But I don't understand why we're going from 65,000 to 100,000 for the library. That's a big bump for the library in 1 year.
And if the Board of Finance comes back to the Board of Selectmen and says, take 60,000 out of your budget, those are all the areas we're gonna have to look at. Right now, that is the budget we feel is not,
I'm not, you stated that we weren't giving you options. I just gave you options, about $200,000 worth of options.
that was on 200,000. It's much less than 200,000 what you just gave me. And secondly, you're not giving me that option. You're giving me the option to cut 250,000 out of my budget. You're not giving me that, an option.
Can we find the other 50 now too?
You can go through every line if you want to, Gary. I mean,
I'm just saying, we're all in this together, and I'm not saying we're gonna cut this deep, but I honestly believe the Board of Finance exists for a reason, the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Education exists for a reason. And the first thing out of the gate should be, if we consumed the additional revenue that we got, this is what our budgets would look like, and this is what we'd like to have. Not, this is what we'd like to have, never mind how much more.
so it doesn't sound like we're all in this together because it sounds like it's the Board of Finance or the highway, right? It's cut everything out except for the additional 512,000 or that's it.
I'm just saying.
I don't hear any, there's no compromise on your board right now.
Personally, I'm asking, what would it look like if we lived within the revenue increase?
But why go to an unreasonable number?
Why is that? Now I go back to Paul. Why is that unreasonable?
I'm done.
I'd say it's unreasonable because we're like 2 weeks ago or last Wednesday or last Monday, whatever it was, when you brought up the 16 to 18% that the town should have in its capital budget is now, I mean, and there's things that let me caveat. I agree with you that the money should be shifted around or spent elsewhere in capital, given the presentations, and the front end loader should not be there, in my opinion. Whether it be the ladder truck or allocated somewhere else. But I think the numbers are good. If we're true to our word and the policy that we're gonna try to create next year, to say you have to cut all this stuff out to get a zero increase, it's talking out of both sides of your mouth. So I don't get it. Cause that's where big numbers are there in capital, like they always are. And I disagree with you about the library.
I think, Bob, Christine, we have had 3 votes tonight, one extreme to the other extreme and one kind of little left of extreme. We are now at, was it 20 after, 25 after 9? We're right back to where we started about an hour. No, we are. We're vote wise, we don't have anything. So when everybody's getting worked up about, we're gonna cut extreme, we're gonna go do this. It's all hypothetical right now. We have not given any direction yet.
it seems to me that we have three people on this board who want to say, give us your budget has to stay within the revenue.
And we have
And you
three
have
the other way.
and three in the other, so
Yeah.
we could sit here, we're gonna be here all night. We're gonna be here for the duration. Until someone says, all right, I am going to not take my unreasonable position.
Same in the otherwise. It's a negotiation. So somebody's got to come down this way, somebody's go this way.
I've already shown that I'm willing to, I said yes to Sarah's. And I said yes to Carl's, even, with $245,000 worth of cuts. That seemed to be reasonable asks for them to make. And you guys said no. And Sarah said no. Well, I mean, I guess, I don't know what you didn't want to cut the Board of Education budget that much? I didn't know what the basis was.
For that one, it was 160 for the Board of Ed, which
Yeah.
is basically all of the new programs that they wanted to do. I mean, that takes out, the 160 would take out the wood shop, the social worker, which I desperately think we need. And we had an amazing social worker in this town who is an institution of this town for 30 years. She is not replicatable, right? We have to be legitimate about our student population. So it just felt like it was a little too deep for me.
Sure. And
1 second.
Go ahead.
I tried to pick a number that they could start with and then come back to us. I think I mentioned that get as close as you can to that. That wasn't set at 160. So I don't know if I misunderstood when it was told, but I was trying to get them a number to start with to see where they could come back at, but not the full 600,000. That's why I did that motion.
I think my understanding, and I could be wrong, so my understanding is the programs they are most worried about, or they're most excited about,
Yep.
however you want to say it, equal about $170,000. So it's
Probably.
the alternative education, the wood shop, the three paras, and the
Social.
social worker. So if we did 160, all of that would, in theory, be wiped out. So I'd be more comfortable with something that would leave room for them to decide whether the alternative education or the social worker or wood shop was more important this year. That's kind of
Yeah.
where I landed,
I thought I tried to word it that way so that
as close as possible.
as close as
yeah.
possible. They may come back and say, I can't get rid of 160,000. And then we're back where we're at, but at least they tried. That's where I started with them numbers where they're at. And I think it only equals a $500,000 added if we do it that way or somewhere in that vicinity. If they did that.
May I just ask a really quick question?
please, go
I'd
ahead.
like to let the administrators who have to go to work tomorrow morning go off the call. I'd like to let Troy and Bill go home. You can we will stay if you want to advise us, but
Yeah, we were here for the night, so
all right.
whoever has to leave, we all have to work in the morning too, so we'll.
Well,
actually,
I
maybe-
understand that, but I really would appreciate that
No,
the
let-
people
no.
that work with our students every day get to
Oh,
go
yeah,
home.
please.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we'll see where we go. I say midnight, we're not staying here till midnight. If we get a stalemate, we're gonna go home, we're gonna sleep on it, we're gonna come back and we're gonna do it again.
Yeah, I think the worst we ever did was like 11.
Yeah. But we got some time ahead of us still.
Yeah, I don't know.
Please, from the audience, I think we're still, why not? It's a good circuit breaker. Yeah.
Was asking her for the remote. She didn't know what I was talking about. I just wanted to mention that you guys were talking about one extreme or the other, this Paul's extreme or these three, I'm not calling you names. You know what I mean? The numbers. And then the other three, less like the other extreme. In my mind, the extreme is the big cuts. That's the extreme. There's no consequence to sending it to the hearing because you're just letting the townspeople give you the input there. And I just wanted to say, it's only 20 people, I kind of feel like you're saying my voice doesn't matter. The people that wrote in and the people that called in and the people that came here, each meeting to state it, we are taxpayers and that's what we're asking. So I understand you want to, lessen the burden to the taxpayer, and I get that. But the taxpayers are saying that we need this in these budgets. And the taxpayers, other than the ones who have already given input, you're speculating on what burden they're willing to take on. So, thank you.
Thank you. There's someone else who wanted to speak. Okay, so we have the same brackets that we started the night out with. Oh, maybe we don't. We have the wish list, the asks, what the boards want, and my bottom bracket was what we can afford to spend without impact. So we have our brackets. I'm still in favor of sending this thing back with that floor to the boards. So much so that I'd like to bring that motion up again. Those identical numbers. I have to repeat them again. To increase for the Board of Education budget, make a motion, increase the Board of Education budget to $350,000 and to the Board of Selectmen at $250,000. Do I have a second? Second. Okay, I have a first and a second on the original motion. Discussion. Maybe you hadn't already had or to repeat.
I'd like, I mean, if since you're bringing the motion, are you personally against bringing on these 3 positions in the wood shop?
I'm bringing the motion for the dollars. I'm indifferent to which positions come in and go out. We'll see what happens, but I want to see the impact and we have to ask them to show us the impact. Okay, let's vote again. Sarah?
No.
Dan?
Yes.
I am a yes. Mike?
No.
Gary?
Yes.
Carl? No. 3-3. Okay. So it doesn't sound like we're going to get anywhere tonight. And if someone has something earth shattering, Brett, please.
Just a question for you guys to think about. Is there any appetite? And I know this is always a tough one, but looking at some of the other towns around us that had pretty large increases, some were smaller than this increase, but mostly all of them had a dip into the undesignated account. I know we don't like to do that. I know we're waiting on some money from the state as well to help replenish that. But is there a dollar value that you have an appetite for to dip into that to come up with a reasonable number? So now you're not putting it all on our tax base, and we're trying to get to a number that works for all parties. Is that something you guys can discuss to see if you have an appetite for that?
Go ahead, thanks first.
I'm not in favor of that at this time.
I'm not either. Hold on one second. We did remember pay a large note out of that undesignated fund this year that we do not know when we are going to get reimbursed. I think, Christine, am I right? It could be up to possible 8 years.
We know projects that have extended through 8 years. We don't have any sort of a date. It
We
could
don't
be
have any
longer, could
sort
be
of
shorter.
date. So that is dead money right now. We don't know when we're going to get reimbursed for that. So we took a large chunk out of the undesignated fund this year to do that. Yes, we took debt off the books, but it's out of the undesignated fund.
Correct. I don't have any appetite to use the undesignated fund personally.
I just have a quick question. Where did the 83,000 that the Board of Education returned to the town go?
Back into the undesignated fund.
Thank you.
We try one more motion before you throw us out tonight?
Hold on, we're ciphering over here.
Not sure where Gary's going, but we'll pause for a moment.
Give a pause.
Okay. Getting any closer, gentlemen? Another minute, okay. Yeah, it's good. Thank you. Oh, smart water.
I noticed
Oh,
half of the
another
table didn't
hurtful.
get.
Was there something coming to us from the end of the table? Or is it still, oh, okay, gotcha. All right. Wasn't sure if it was still, okay.
For the benefit of the viewers at home, there's some quiet calculations going on, and it looks like double checking of the calculations. And perhaps we will hear.
That would be great for the audience, just so we know what to expect.
So what we're toying with is if we asked to come back with budgets that supported a $500,000 increase. So an additional 309,000 roughly on top of 512. And then allowed the boards to say, could you live within that? But go ahead.
We proposed something similar, I believe either last year or the year before that, where we say, here's a chunk.
Yep.
You guys go fight over it, and absolutely not. That's when we were talking about 70-30. And you guys said, no, or work it out amongst yourselves, and that's when I made the motion going 50-50.
Well, last year they actually worked it out.
Yeah,
Real-
at the end, because no, we did 50-50.
Yeah, there was some emotion, but they
Yes.
got there.
I remember that conversation very well.
So I know you're doing some, that number,
On the side,
Gary, so
Yeah.
What's magical about $500,000 versus a $250,000?
King Solomon, we're splitting the baby.
I believe the story ended.
What's that?
I believe the way the story ended is that King David intervened and they did not actually split the baby, right?
Exactly.
They got the whole
No,
baby.
no, but
I'm just saying.
what I would like to see is what's the level of pain associated with it. And we, as I was saying, we may choose to reject it when we see it, but until we see it, we won't know.
hypothetically, if we somehow passed a motion that was this $0.5 increase and they had to go back and work magic. But they came back and said, we can't do magic. We are where we are. We just start over?
Yep. That's correct. So I would fully expect that to come back and not meet the requests. But see what you have to say.
So. All right, what the proposal is that if you take the 512,622, which is the additional revenue we have right now. And you add $500,000, you add half of whatever that delta was, that 609, 612, 619. Divide that by 2, so that's 309, 601. Add those two together and the total increase that is 822,223 to go between the two boards.
What would the total cut between the two boards be?
Well,
309. 309.
That would be a reduction to increases of 309, not cuts. Semantics, but it's true. You're right. Sorry, was there something
no,
wrong?
because the 1,147,020 minus the 512, it's technically 634,398, but because of we're going by the mill rate of 28.45, there's extra cash in there that drops that delta down to 619. Okay, does that make sense? So
Like,
you're.
It does and it doesn't. You have to use the real numbers. So if you're saying that, like, I can put it in the spreadsheet and make it so that we increase by $500,000, and then I can give you that new number, and then we can go from there, just because otherwise we're gonna be throwing too many numbers out.
Sounds good.
Okay. Okay, so we would need to reduce by 320,582 if the mill rate was 28.95. 325,82 is what needs to be reduced. But am I putting the right number in the spreadsheet for increasing by $500,000?
Yes.
Okay, just confirm.
320 what?
325,82.
And I just want to put it in perspective for everybody, okay? That if the number is 822,223, if you add those. Right now let me just see, hold on a second. Let me use the real number.
So while you're doing that, Mike, so this board is saying without kicking these budgets back, that we're okay with a $500,000 increase. So everybody gonna have to nod their head and be on the record for tax increase before we start sharpening pencils. I will be a no vote for it, but it's a majority rules, but is that sitting okay with everyone?
It's not sitting okay. I'll vote yes for it because I think we need to make progress, but I'm disappointed that we received a flat no.
Okay, we'll see how the vote
I'm
goes.
equally disappointed that I got a no.
I think we all got told.
Which, by the way, is the sign of a good negotiation. If everybody feels bad.
That's right.
Right.
It works.
We call it, everyone walks away feeling dirty.
That's right. Oh, Lord.
I just,
If-
but I
if-
just
well,
want, just for perspective, if there's roughly $820,000 in new spending and 655 goes to the teachers, including, the increased salaries, contractual salaries in the new positions, you're leaving, $166,000 to go everywhere else.
I say we let them figure it out.
I'm just wanting to put in perspective.
So give that to me again. So let who figure it out?
If, let these guys figure it out.
The split.
The split. The Board of Selectmen and the Board of.
what I'm-
negotiate against-
I'm just saying, like, we know that there's hard numbers for salaries. If you're gonna add, if they're gonna add those other positions of 655,000 and change. So out of that money, the 512 plus the $500,000, it doesn't leave a lot for the other things that they want to do, including the capital and all the other budget increases that the Board of Education have listed in their budget.
And that's not to say that they're gonna come back and say that they can't do it. Here it is again.
Right.
That's giving them the option. They're
Correct,
Set,
right.
okay.
Yeah, so I have a couple comments. One, I do not think it's appropriate not to give guidance per board. Two, I just think it's cutting the increases too deep. It's taking out, it's what, for the Board of Ed, it's wiping everything that they wanted to do, plus they're gonna have to go find other places to cut, which is gonna be instructional supplies for children. It's gonna be paras so now teachers, won't have the extra help in the classroom they need, so. And I can't even imagine what it's gonna do to our capital fund.
Well, we're at a complete standstill. As we stand,
Yeah. I don't,
that we have to send them back to look at their budgets, given the present makeup of this board and where their votes are, and have them come back and tell us, we tried to do what you did and here's what it looks like. I'm not doing it with, hey, you're only getting what, the 512. It's just, it's not the town I want to live in. But to give them a starting point and if, there's some things I agree with Gary that other things that we looked at. Not necessarily want to cut capital. I know it's going to happen if we do here, but just to give them food for thought on moving things around in capital and being more strategic. This is a starting point that I can get my head behind.
Go ahead, Bob.
So just speaking as the first selectman, not for my board, just for me, I'd be willing to take that offer if that gets motioned and approved, because at least it gives us a reasonable starting point, right? So we're not starting at some place I know I can't get to. Gary made some points. I'd be willing to go to the Board of Selectmen and say, hey, these are points were brought up at the Board of Finance. Obviously, if they're in there, we don't want to cut them, but if we have to go somewhere. So I'm willing to do that. We both said if we got this offer, we're not going to come back and tell you we can't do anything. That wouldn't be fair to you. We have to listen to say, yes, we'll have to make some hard choices, but we'll do that. We always have to make hard choices. We already made a lot of hard choices, but we have to make some more, but just give us something reasonable. So, sir, I would accept that offer to go back and work something out with the amount of money that you're going to give us if you go to a $500,000.
I just don't think it's in keeping with what the public has told us.
I will let you know I won't come back with the exact same budget as well. I think this isn't a game. Saying, show me what it looks like, just so I can see, you can see what it looks like. It's really clear what it looks like. It's staffing, it's programs. That's all it is. There's no place else it's going to come. So it's going to come from the new positions that we desperately need. And then we're going to have to look at instructional supply coming back out of our budget again, finding different ways to get those things to our teachers. And then it's going to have to be looking at staffing, which I'm hoping none are on the call right now because they're going to freak out when they hear that. I'm so incredibly disappointed that a $1 million increase in the world of a 7% inflation economic environment that we're living in right now is the game changer, and that we're not willing to invest more money to make and continue to embrace this amazing school system that we have. I can't tell you how disappointed I am. There is no fluff in there. And I understand, Paul, I get it. You hate the non-lapsing. You're upset about it. I understand that. But discussion is about our budget and what it takes to operate our school and what it takes to support those kids. And if that's where you guys need to go, we will go there. But I don't expect surprises of like, hey, where can you do it and show it to us? Yeah, I'm showing it to you. You see where it is. We've told you where it is. If you need to see the bottom line number, you'll see it that way. I understand you're asking for that, but there's not going to be, we get to keep our programs. Guess what? We found some money and here it is. So if that's what we're looking for, I just want to let you know that's probably not going to come out of the conversations.
And if the tables were turned and you, the Board of Education came to us and we just said, no, can't do it, how would you feel? Because that was the answer we got when we said, show us living within the revenue, and you said, no, we can't do that.
I guess I'm not understanding the question. I mean, I guess we went through the process of already cutting to get to the point of what we brought them. We talk about the process. We've been doing this for months. So we didn't just bring you, hey, here's our budget. We went through all the work to get you the very lowest. And if you want me to do what you're asking me to do, all I'm saying is you want me to show it to you. I'm showing it to you on paper right now. It's in salaries and new positions. There is no other place.
I don't want to argue this on.
I'm just trying to understand, I guess, what the question is to get there.
We had some sidebar conversations. We had some stuff. I
Can
do,
we-
do not, sorry, Mike, just one
Just
word, please.
go ahead.
I do agree that whatever road we go down, we need to say Board of Ed is this, Board of Selectmen is this number. So not to send our job to farm it out to those two boards to figure out who's going to get what, in my mind. But we're not there yet. Just wanna say
With
that.
you
Go ahead.
saying that, are they allowed to change? If Christine says, I need 50,000 from you, Bob, can they bounce that back and forth? I think that's what these guys are trying to come up with.
No,
is-
and I think we've tried that, right? I mean,
We did
I-
that one
I
year.
guess
You
it's
asked
so-
them and then they ended up doing it at the end of the time to give it to us at the end.
yeah, I
Yeah,
don't know if that
they-
breaks any rules, but it's just unusual,
never mind.
maybe, right? I don't know.
Well, let's come up with, what's the total number? It's 512,622 plus,
So the total increase would be 826,438. So that's taking the current increase of $1,147,020 and subtracting the 320,582 that we are over with a mill rate of 28.95.
Can you read the 800,000?
826,438.
We agreed to have, for the tax relief, we did agree to have an ordinance, so that must also be funded from that $500,000, or are we gonna increase taxes more? Right, that's a decision we're gonna make here tonight. Again, none of which I will vote for, but does that come out of, Mike, the dollars we're throwing out in your mind?
I think we just deal with what we're dealing with, Paul, and I mean,
And
we have-
ignore the retirees in town?
not gonna ignore the retiree, I mean, it's, you wanna take out the $79,000 from the number right now? Then do that.
And I think
No,
if we all- we voted for it.
I would leave it in and let the Board of Selectmen deal with that. It's their job. They can prepare their paperwork. If the state funding comes through, it's a wash. Why even get into the weeds? If they can solve it in what we're asking, all the better.
I would also advise you, it's going to be the first time that that program's going into effect. So you may not have as many people that fill out the applications the first year. And everything is based on an estimation. We don't have a database of all of the demographics of everybody in town, and we know exactly who's going to be able to qualify for it. So that was where they estimated that number.
Yeah, I got you. So again, that's a group that's wildly underrepresented here. So I think it's an important cohort to make sure it's recognized.
So if the topic is a threshold, split it 50-50. It's a little less of a cut for the school, a little more of a cut for the town. But I am supportive of the programs that they're trying to do. Let's see what they can do.
Let me just, hold on one second.
Go ahead, Dan. No more questions. No.
So that would be each group cutting 160, 291.
But based on the size of the Board of Ed budget, to Bob's budget, including the capital, it is a major hit for Bob's budget.
Yeah, but I'm not negating that Bob and Christine are gonna work this off to the side and they're gonna come up with their own balance. I'm just, we said we felt it was disingenuous to not give them thresholds. That's just a starting pitch. You want to propose something else? I'm all ears.
Just so, I mean, the increases that are asked for, the Board of Education budget, I mean, the Board of Selectmen budget is half of the ask of the Board of Education. Right? No, what I'm saying is like, if you looked at the change that they're asking for originally, it's the Board of Education is double the size of Bob's budget. One third, two thirds.
I mean, we could say it 1/3, 2/3.
1/3, 2/3.
That's whatever.
So if you guys give us that directive, do we have the opportunity to be collaborative and say,
Yes,
hey, why
yes,
don't we do
yes,
that?
yes.
So it's a suggestion, not a.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
so we. Yeah, so that's what I just want to be
Well,
clear on,
I brought that up.
100%.
because
split
I think it allows us to
75-30,
be.
Or 70-30, and it was completely shot down. Why were working amongst you guys yourselves? No, it was both. I think we were just in different spots. I think you guys were sitting over there, not there. But what I'm.
Was it Mike?
Yeah, it was, no.
No, but that was the initial reaction, but the deliverable came back as a collaborative effort.
Right, because I think as just a Board of Selectmen member, I think it allows us to work within the guidelines, but I mean, ultimately, it's the taxpayer that are paying for these services, so we should be working together. I mean, we talk about that at our tri-board meeting, right? And I wish this was more of a process, a friendly process between the two boards and the Board of Finance, and I hope we can get there someday, so it's not this much back and forth. But I think amongst the two boards, we can work to try to come back with something that might appease at least four of you.
So Gary, why don't you make the motion? Basically,
I've lost track of the numbers now. You got, I'll second, you gotta make the motion.
I will.
oh, effing way, I'll second your shit.
So are we?
We can start here with a $500,000. There's a total amount.
Okay, so I make a motion that we ask the boards to come back with their respective budgets reflective of an increase of 512,622 plus $500,000, which brings us to approximately 826,438 to be split 60-40, 1/3, 2/3. What, how do we want to split it?
It's suggested, but you guys work it out.
Suggested 1/3, 2/3, but we embrace collaborative effort here. Thanks.
Second.
We have a first, we have a first and a second. Any more discussion? Okay, on the motion. Sarah, how do you vote?
No.
It's one no. I'm gonna just do my math here. Dan. We can come back to you. if you want. I am a no. Mike?
Yes.
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 Dun-dun-dun-dun.
Is it a vote or is that just a clearing your throat?
No. You guys are gonna work together to be able to get to that number. No,
Let them know.
no.
The motion does not pass.
I'm probably more swayable than Dan, just throwing it out there. Not a revote. Yeah, no, I'm just saying for a second motion.
I wanted you to get to that number and some went there and he said, we'll do the best we can. No, I'm a no.
So Dan, I would just say if I can take out, if it was 50-50, 160 each, if I can take out more than 160, I'll give that overage to the Board of Ed. So that's the collaboration you're looking for, correct?
I think what he's looking for is that they wanted to see what your budgets would look like if you had no increase other than the revenue. So what I think, Dan, and correct me if I'm wrong, come back with the budget, show us what your cuts have to be if you're gonna come in that budget, correct, Dan?
I want to see the cuts. That's what I want. I want to see the cuts.
Right. So
Regardless how brutal it
with,
is.
with a $500,000 increase, is that correct? So
Doesn't-
if we can get that number between the two of us, which is what we're striving for, that's what you want, that's what you're asking us.
The vote's over.
And I'm telling you that if I can take more than my share and
Bob,
give it to the Board of Ed,
The vote is over. I'm not negotiating now.
okay, I get it. No, I'm just trying to understand why, what we could have said, that you would have changed your vote the other way.
I'm,
What's that? He voted no.
Yeah, I think really this is, again, not that I'm for it, but I think that some board members, this is it. Right? That's kind of what a couple are saying. A couple have some more room. Can you get there? Is I think what's being asked. And
I'm just confused. I understand what you're saying. You said, will you come in with that budget?
and when they talked about it, well, and it was like, we'll try. No, that's not what I wanted to hear. That wasn't the first thing. And then when I said no, it's like, oh, yeah, we'll come to that. No, that's not what I wanted to hear.
I'm not sure that the motion was clear, to be honest with you. I'm not sure that it was clear.
it was clear. Still the dollar value, I thought it was pretty clear. Okay, it's 10 o'clock.
I want to make a motion.
Oh, Sarah, please.
So if we did 0.6 mil, which would be a 29.05 tax increase, the reduction would be 260,858. I would vote yes for that. So I'm going to make a motion. Maybe it's the last one of the night. I don't know, but I'm going to throw it out there.
You guys are the last one, yeah.
So give me the,
So it's 0.6 mil. The tax increase, the mill rate, the mill rate would be the mill rate would be 29.05.
it's not
And-
part of the motion, right?
No, I'm just reading the numbers. And then the decrease that we all just voted on a minute ago was 320,582. The decrease of a 0.6 would be 260,858.
So what's the total amount that is gonna be available
As an increase.
as an increase?
So total increase 886,162. 886,162.
Second that. No, actually, did you do
I
the
gotta,
motion?
yeah, let me do the motion. So I make a motion to increase the budget by 886,162 and ask for reductions in the current submitted budgets of $260,858 to be split collaboratively 2/3, 1/3 across the two boards. Did I do that right?
Okay.
Second.
We have a first and a second, Sarah and Mike. More discussion? Just a little bit. 0.6. Not percent, 0.6 mil is what's on the table now.
Versus 0.5.
Yeah, which is, it's instead of 270, it's 300, or whatever it is. Per average house. Any other discussion? I mean, I don't know what else to say.
It's a $60,000 difference from the last vote.
Respectfully, we're pole vaulting over Mousters. I don't know what the appreciable difference is between 0.6 and 0.5.
It's a
It was,
social worker.
it wasn't, like I said, I just wanted to see the number. So we can go to vote whenever you want, Bob.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
it's a haircut. Okay, no more discussion. Let's start. Sarah,
Yes.
we have one yes, one no. I too am a no. Mike,
Yes.
Gary,
No.
and the guy at the end, Carl.
Yes.
3-3, the motion does not pass. Okay. Okay, we're all back. Let me ask, just maybe it's a straw poll. Do we continue with motions? Because right now, I thought we had a bracket, but if I think about it, we don't have any brackets, right? The high doesn't work, the low doesn't work, the middle doesn't work. Do we need time? Or do you want to keep on chugging? I mean, I'm happy, not happy to, but I will.
I'd like to get it done tonight if we can.
I-
I really don't want to repeat this conversation a second time. We can afford it.
Here's my suggestion. I mean, we're asking these guys to, and I'm gonna include you, Dan, in what we're asking is to show us what your budgets would be collaboratively with only a $500,000 increase. The good, bad, and the ugly. So I am going to move that we request the boards to revise their budgets with the 512,622 of additional revenue plus a $500,000 coming to $826,438. We're suggesting a 2/3, 1/3 use of that money, but you guys can work collaboratively to determine what your budgets would look like with that increase.
Is that a motion?
That's
To
my
be
motion.
To be clear, you're stating that the combined number that you want them to come back with does not exceed 826,438,
That's correct.
to be clear.
That
Second.
represents a $500,000 increase. Do we have a second? First and a second? First and a second? Any more discussion? Okay. So. Come back to you, Dan.
Yes.
I am a no. Mike?
Yes.
Yes.
Carl?
Yes.
Wait,
It's kind of, it's kind of,
I know, I'm a no.
okay. The motion passes 4-2. Congratulations, Board of Finance.
Sarah.
And we're not even done yet. This is great.
Oh,
You know,
what's that?
we're done with that.
Oh, no.
Next line item.
I got another line item. You're failing me.
Okay, where do we go from that
There's a lot to vote no.
piece of business? I mean, it's on the record. We're done. We can move on. Okay. I'm even blurry with my glasses on now. Review of minutes. I know there was a couple sets that came out.
Minutes from the 13th and minutes from the 15th.
Make a motion to table those minutes.
Second.
Yes, we can. We've had minutes
Oh,
out
we
since
can?
July.
We saw public comments, so we're not going anywhere.
It's short.
Huh?
It was short. I mean, do we have a first and a second?
I
We have to
didn't,
vote on
I
it.
didn't review them.
You never go? Nope. So we need a review. So we're gonna table those until the whole committee has time to review. Public comments. Come on. Oh, yes.
I think Paul must have.
Sorry, I meant to call on you earlier. I apologize.
So, the first thing I'd like to ask is that you
Yeah, we already did.
consider changing the date of the public hearing on our budget calendar. It's, I think, set for the 17th of April. And we talked on the Board of Ed about this. The 17th of April is the first Monday following the April vacation break. I am super concerned that it does not necessarily give parents, and I know maybe some of you don't want parents to call in,
We want everybody. there.
but it might not give you a fair representation of the town as parents, that a lot of them will be their first day back to work, maybe home from vacation, kids' first day back to school. It's a really chaotic day, especially if you have little kids. So I would ask that you would consider changing that to maybe Tuesday, Wednesday, not a big change, just a little shift. And I don't think it should impact your calendar all that significantly.
Did we discuss that already? When we first put the calendar together?
We did, we had it that day so that it is not during the public school break. And if we change that, then we have to change everything. Everything is dependent on each.
But it could just be a day.
Everything has to change.
Right, but by a day, I think it's doable, and I would just ask that you guys consider it.
Is that our decision or is that the board?
spoke about it too. I don't know.
It's public comment. We can take it under advisement and discuss
Yeah,
it at a
okay.
future meeting.
Thank you. So,
And that's-
in terms of process.
Yeah.
Now I feel like I've listened to this a few times, and Paul, what you said actually makes a ton of sense, which was, look, just show me what it looks like only using the revenue, right? The increased revenue. Show me that. I think the issue comes in, and Gary, I think your statement of saying, it's not necessarily a cut. I just want to see. I want to see the impact. I think those things are great plans. I think it's where it's coming in the process that's sort of jamming everybody up. So if prior to budget season, I mean, we know what the revenue is sort of going to look like. You guys have been talking about it at the Board of Selectmen for some time now. We can bring you our budget that we want. And then if the Board of Finance also wants to just see initially what it looks like, what the impact is, because I think that's what Gary's saying. Show me the impact so I have a reason to say this isn't acceptable, the town needs more. I think that if we do it early, if you all make a decision about that early, give us that guidance, then we would be able to do it in a way that it wouldn't feel frustrating. I think it would feel not like you're telling us we really don't trust you or we think there's it just is. It's part of the process. Show us what you're proposing and then show us the impact if you do it this way, this way, and this way. So I think it actually, I don't think that your asks are ridiculous. I think it's just coming at a point in the process that makes it feel bad and like everyone's done a bunch of work that doesn't matter. So that's my comment on the process. In terms of the idea that if that always saying no tax increase is fiscally responsible to the town. I don't want to speak for the Board of Selectmen's budget, but I could tell you that when we look at ours, if we were to remove anything but the excess revenue, what we cut is services, right? And you can see it in your budget. It's pretty clear. We've removed all the capital items, all that sort of stuff. So effectively, while there's an increase in revenue, so you're not asking us to be lower than we were last year. You're actually allowing us to be higher. You're asking the taxpayer to pay the exact same amount of money for less services. So I would challenge you that as a board might not be the most fiscally responsible thing or the thing most palatable to the taxpayer. It's expensive to live in North Stonington. No one's going to debate that. And I think people that live here generally live here for a reason and they make a choice why here and not somewhere else. But I think when you start telling people you need to pay the same, but I'm going to give you less, they become potentially as dissatisfied as if you ask them to pay a little more. So I would ask you to think about your job maybe a little differently than I heard tonight, although I know that you're under a lot of pressure right now and you have to make decisions thinking about everyone. And all of you talk to your people. So you all have people in your head when you're sort of thinking about representing them. But think about the idea of investing in services and really doing justice to what the taxpayer is paying. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you for that. That was very nice. Other comments, public comments in the room? Brian, go right ahead.
Something happened. No, I just had a couple of questions as far as the shop that they were talking about. I looked up a couple of things as far as the CNC machines, because that seems to be the way woodworking is going nowadays. That's one of the things that put me out of a job, is CNC machine. Everybody became an assembler, so they didn't need someone who could figure it out. They just punched it all in the computer, slap a piece on the machine, cut out the pieces, and then you take an air gun, boom, boom, boom. I keep hearing that it's to build sets. I don't know if that's for the shows that they have at school or what it is. I used to build trade show sets when I was at Sonos, and it's not really, it looks like they're looking for a space to do it. I don't think that is a space to do it, because if they start doing it with the regular machines, it's gonna take a long time. Like I say, the CNC machines, they cut everything out for all your locks and everything, and then you just put them together. Otherwise, you gotta rob them by hand, take them for that. They won't even be able to do it for speed. And the other thing is, I'm still not feeling so. Standard for many years. And are we do they have one now and they want another one? Or are they just, I don't know why we're gonna hire two to replace, we got one.
I think they have one, if I understand it correctly, and she's seeing 80 students per week. And I forget how many in the school system we have, how many kids in the school system, but the state
750?
guideline is one
Is it
social worker for every 200 kids, and we have 800 kids for one social worker. And that plus the layered on post-COVID stress that our kids are going through, it's suggested it's a wise investment in the mental health of the kids to have another social worker in the school
It's
system.
a recommendation.
I'm
That's why
married,
I'm
I'm
wondering
married
if
to an
it should be-
MSW.
I'm just wondering if it can be until, there's gotta be a time and you hooked up with pandemic and that bothered people. Are they gonna catch up to a point where they can only use one?
I
That's-
can't speak to.
And that's what I'd say. I don't know if they can just hire a part-time or not. And that might be a savings. for them. That would just- Think the rules.
Yep.
So thank you guys too.
No, thank you for that. Yeah, we will figure it out. We're not there yet, but we're getting closer. Chet, please unmute and go right ahead, my friend.
Hi, I know it's late, so I will try and make these comments as short as possible, but first off, I do want to thank you all. I know as a member of the Board of Education, it is frustrating to watch the Board of Finance take what we consider to be incredibly long and tedious work in setting these up to, take it apart and pull things out of it. And so I know that's a difficult job that you all have, and I keep trying to quell my own frustration in this process. I've watching the meeting this evening, what it really comes down to for me is I do feel like there is an issue of trust that comes into play in this process that seems to be lacking in different areas. And I think that moving forward, it's important that we find that, because I think that the trouble is that we come in trusting that we're going to do all of the work and come to the Board of Finance, and the Board of Finance will look at our work and say, this is good work. I look at this budget, it makes sense to me, and therefore I'm going to put it onto the taxpayer to be able to make the decision whether or not that it's palatable to them. And I think that I feel like there's a lack of trust on the Board of Finance that that's what we're coming to you with. But I also think there's a lack of trust on my part when I think, all right, if we make these cuts and then we come back to the Board of Finance, is the Board of Finance really going to then change their mind magically and decide, no, okay, all of these things are important and we're going to give the increase? And so when the commentary is just, we want to see what the cuts would look like so that we can make a more educated decision. I guess when I think of that, I think when we come back with cuts, it's never going to then be, okay, well, we're going to go ahead and give that increase to the Board of Ed now. Once those once those cuts are asked from the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Ed, it feels like they never come back. And it's the reason I was hoping that this would go forward to the budget hearing, so you would hear a larger number of people speak on it, so that you would be able to see that process and hear a little bit more, because I do believe that our town right now is looking for bigger and better things from our schools. I do appreciate, Mike, the fact that you kept bringing this back around to people. I know that the feeling is this is a financial number. This is something we're trying to cut, but it truly is people within our building, and with the cuts that we're going to be looking at, I think it's going to be people who are already in our building that we may need to get rid of. And I guess that leaves a bad taste in my mouth. And I think that it's important that when you're looking at these numbers, you remember that these are a social worker that we're trying to get into the building for our kids so that they are able to learn better, and an alternative ed program that honestly will save money over the long term, more likely than not, and also serve our students in a bigger and better way for them and allow them to be more successful in life. So I'm sad and I'm frustrated, and I hope that you know, we can find a way to make cuts that will make this work, but I think that we will be harming students within our town, and I think that we harm our town as a whole by doing that. So thank you.
Thank you, Chet. Any other comments anywhere? Please step up to the mic. Turn it on.
Can I just, before Chet disappears and Stephanie, this is the second year I've gone through this process. Next year, if I'm sitting here, I will ask, what does it look like if we live within our revenue increases? That'll be the first question I ask.
Well, and honestly, Stephanie making that comment, Gary, I think I mean, if that's what is something that we can give you that much earlier on in this process, and you can say, hey, listen, we don't get this, we don't get this, we don't get this. That was an excellent point that Stephanie made, and I think that it's something that if that's what you want to see beforehand, so that we come to this and we say, this is our best, like, this is what is going to make our town grow. We're not sitting here feeling like we're just getting all of our hopes and desires for our town torn from us.
Just to be clear, I'd like to see them together. You know, this is what it looks like if we are within our revenue growth of the year, and this is where we think we should be. And this is what that extra is going to get us. That would ground me.
Great.
Well, and I do feel like that was partially given during that presentation that Troy gave. I mean, he showed these are the things that we're adding in. This is the increases, and this is what this is. But I don't think that it was apparently clearly enough laid out in that set. So.
All right, thank you. Winona,
I want
please.
to tag on to Gary's comments because I sat here at the February meeting and I asked this board to do just that. I said, can we please provide guidance at the beginning of this process so that both boards know where we want them to be? And that, my request, I don't even think we had discussion on it. It was basically just ignored, and we're back here. So if I'm here again next year, come January and February, I will be on that soapbox again because I think that it's the right thing to do for everybody, including our own board.
I think you can guarantee your seat here, right? Isn't it six-year term? Okay, great. Anything else? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I just have a question. Has anybody been following the money that the state might have available in education to assist with all these social needs and mental health issues? I heard that they had a huge amount of money, but has anybody been following it to see what we might end up with, even if it's at the bottom of the barrel?
To answer for us, I don't think we are, but are there grants available, or I'm sure the Board of Ed?
Yes, I think it's why they budget money for education because of this pandemic and all the mental health issues, and I don't think they delegated to any particular issue. It's just, when will we know, and will it help?
I'd happy to take a comment from Stephanie Board of.
I don't know that I'm the best person to answer this, but I can tell you, Pat, that the ESSER funds that we received from the state for COVID, we were able. Sure. So our business manager certainly follows that. And in fact, last week brought us something positive from the governor's office that looks like there is a significant potential for a safety grant. So if you look at our budget detail where we have our non-lapsing account, you can see that there are several safety items that after we had a safety audit were recommended to us to make our schools just a little more safe. And we have quotes for what all those things would cost. They're very expensive, but we're willing to make that out of our non-lapsing account because it's so important. But now we understand that there may be a grant available to really help with that. So I think indirectly, my answer is yes, we absolutely follow the money. That's why we have a business manager, and that's how we stay fiscally responsible.
Thank you for that. Okay, I'm not seeing other virtual hands or real hands. Last agenda item is adjournment. I'll make the motion tonight. Motion to adjourn. No second? Second. All in favor? That's everyone. Thank you all.